CEO missed his flight on Easter after a little girl ran up to him, hugged his leg, and called him Daddy, leaving everyone shocked. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. It was Easter weekend, and the terminal was a carnival of commotion. Families lugging suitcases, rushing to catch connecting flights, and children squealing in excitement about bunny ears and chocolate eggs. In the midst of it all strode Christian Martens, the famously composed and impeccably dressed CEO of Martens Tech Industries. His polished shoes clicked against the white marble floor at a brisk pace. He was running late. This was not a man accustomed to running late for anything, especially for a flight to finalize an overseas acquisition he'd spent months orchestrating. His assistant's anxious voice buzzed through his Bluetooth earpiece. "Sir, they're already calling final boarding. The investor meeting can't be rescheduled." Christian, wearing a charcoal suit that had cost more than some people's monthly rent, tightened his grip on the handle of his sleek carry-on. He could practically see the gate in the distance, the sign blinking with urgent letters. Last call for boarding. Not the kind of sign a busy CEO ever wanted to see. Still, he was proud of how he managed crisis after crisis: the product glitch last quarter, the board vote on new expansions, a fierce PR challenge when a competitor spread rumors about his company's data encryption. Through it all, Christian was unshakable. That is, until now, when a tiny, unexpected voice shattered his usual calm. "Daddy!" He froze, mid-step, nearly toppling a stack of coffee cups carried by a passing barista. A small child, a little girl in pink sparkly sneakers and a polka-dot jacket, had launched herself against his leg, hugging him as if she'd known him all her short life. Her face was partially hidden against the fabric of his suit, but he noticed her hair was in two uneven pigtails, each tied with a bright ribbon. Christian's mind sputtered, uncomprehending. The minute hand on his watch ticked menacingly, reminding him that at any other moment he would simply sidestep this confusion and proceed to the gate. But there was something in the child's voice, an innocence, a desperate longing, that made him stand still. Passengers hurried around them like a rushing stream parting at a rock. Some cast quizzical glances, others slowed to see if an emotional reunion was about to unfold. Christian, baffled, started to speak. I'm sorry, little one." But before he could peel the girl off his leg or ask what was going on, a young woman came sprinting toward them, her face pale with shock. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, clearly out of breath from chasing her daughter across the terminal. Her hair was a little disheveled, and there were faint shadows beneath her eyes, the look of a single mother juggling far too many responsibilities. "Emily!" she gasped, pulling the little girl away from Christian with a mixture of panic and embarrassment. The woman's eyes, big and brown, flicked up to Christian's face, and in that moment, time itself seemed to pause. He recognized her instantly, Caroline Ainsley, the one person he had never truly managed to forget. He felt his breath catch in his throat. The swirl of the airport and all its urgent announcements faded. In front of him stood a piece of his past he had long buried under ambition and success. Caroline's grip tightened around her daughter's shoulders. When she found her voice, it was shaking with disbelief. "Christian?" He attempted a smooth facade, but the crack in his usually impenetrable armor was too evident. "Caroline," he said softly, as if testing whether speaking her name might cause him to shatter. "It's been a long time." People around them continued to bustle. Unstoppable flight announcements buzzed overhead, and an exasperated airline employee was calling Christian's name over the intercom. He was the last passenger needed to close the door on his flight. But in that second, none of it mattered. His mind played a rapid montage of recollections. The summer job where they first met, the day she said yes to a last-minute road trip up the coast, the night on the pier under fireworks when he'd promised her that life had endless possibilities, and then the memory of him leaving, chasing his career on the opposite side of the country, rationalizing that love was secondary to success. He swallowed, 1,000 questions tangling on his tongue. Meanwhile, Emily, her tiny arms still clinging to him, seemed oblivious to the adult tension swirling around her. She simply looked up, bright eyes shining, and repeated in her gentle voice, "Daddy, are you not going to come with us?" Caroline tensed as if bracing for impact, her cheeks flushing with a mix of fear and shame. "Emily, sweetheart, he's not." Then she cast Christian an anguished glance, obviously flustered about explaining the truth. Christian's gaze dropped to the little girl. He noted the shape of her eyes, the slight dimple in her left cheek, and the freckles on her nose. Something flickered in the back of his mind. "Ma'am!" The airline gate agent rushed up behind Christian, face stern, voice clipped with impatience. "You must board now if you intend to make this flight, Mr. Martins. We are closing the door." He'd never missed a flight in his life. Never. But as he stared at Caroline, who seemed on the brink of tears, and at Emily, who was so sure he was her father that she'd fearlessly run into his arms, something that had always been steady in him began to waver. I need just a minute," Christian answered the agent, surprising even himself with the tremor in his tone. He let go of his carry-on handle and took a small step back from the swirling madness of the terminal. In that instant, Caroline bowed her head, blinking against tears she clearly didn't want anyone to see. "I'm sorry," she managed, her voice quiet. "She's never done anything like this before. I told her that I told her about you a long time ago in the stories I used to share. She must have recognized you from a photo." Christian heard every single syllable echo in his mind. A photo? Had she kept pictures of him after all these years? His chest felt tight. Emily, missing the gravity of the situation, tugged on his sleeve. "It's Easter," she said, wide-eyed. "Mommy said the Easter Bunny brings special surprises. Are you our surprise?" Her question was heartbreakingly pure. Christian knelt down in front of her, ignoring the overhead calls to board. He forced a small smile, even though his heart hammered like a drum. I'm not sure," he said quietly, "but maybe I can walk you and your mom somewhere safe first." He could practically feel the entire tide of his life turning. The old Christian would have pivoted, apologized, and dashed onto his plane without looking back. "I'll call," he might have lied. Then he'd bury himself in spreadsheets and deals, sipping first-class champagne as his conscience sank like a stone. But now, that logic felt impossible. He saw the exhaustion in Caroline's eyes, the hopeful innocence in Emily's. He realized that she was barely 5 or 6, did the math in his head, and a cold wave of recognition washed over him. There was a distinct possibility that he needed more than a rushed conversation. The gate agent's voice snapped him out of his daze. "Sir, final call. If you don't board, you'll lose your seat. The flight is about to depart." Christian's phone buzzed. A text from his overseas partner. The words glowed. "We need you here or the deal is off." He gazed down at Emily, who was fiddling with the corner of his suit jacket, as if she believed he belonged there. Then he looked up at Caroline. She appeared torn, like a person who had decided to come forward with the truth but never expected to see him in the flesh, especially not under these bright airport lights with an urgent plane to catch. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Christian made his choice. He removed his Bluetooth earpiece and turned it off. "Tell them—" He paused, eyes flicking to the gate agent. "Tell them I missed my flight. My business can wait." The agent stared in disbelief, but after one glance at Christian's expression, he recognized it was not a time for argument. He nodded curtly, stepping away to inform the cabin crew. A hush fell over them, the chaos of the airport suddenly distant. Caroline opened her mouth in silent shock, her tears returning. Emily, perplexed, looked between the two adults. "Aren't you supposed to go, mister?" And that was the moment Christian realized his entire life had changed in a heartbeat. Perhaps the biggest deal of his career was slipping away, but some deals, he was beginning to understand, mattered far more than money could measure. He gently took Emily's hand, and for the first time in years, He addressed Caroline with genuine kindness in his voice. "I think maybe it's time we caught up." The airport had begun to empty out, its hustle calming into a low hum. Lost in the swirl of questions whirling through his mind, Christian walked with Caroline and Emily toward a nearby seating area. Though it was Easter weekend, a holiday meant for family gatherings, bright decorations, and children chattering about baskets of candy, the small group felt like they were in a world of their own. Caroline looked nervous, as if she couldn't quite believe she was here with Christian after so many years. Every once in a while her eyes darted toward him and then away, full of unspoken thoughts. Emily, nestled comfortably between them, offered occasional remarks on the color of a passing suitcase, or how one airline desk displayed pink and yellow balloons shaped like eggs. Her innocence was a stark contrast to the thick tension coloring the air. When they finally found 3 empty chairs by a large window, Caroline settled Emily on one while Christian hesitated for the slightest moment. Was it right for him to sit so close to them? Moments ago, he had been sprinting for a flight that would seal a major business deal. Now he was sitting in a quiet corner of the terminal with the woman he once walked away from and a little girl who believed he was her father. He lowered himself into a seat, and for a moment he couldn't help but notice the reflection of the 3 of them in the glass. It looked almost like a family portrait, the sort he had seen in marketing campaigns for domestic flights, but now it felt uncomfortably real. He exhaled. "So, Caroline," he began, voice trembling just a little. I need to understand what happened, and how—" He cast a meaningful glance toward Emily, who was now swinging her legs back and forth, clearly excited to be part of something but also keenly aware that she wasn't entirely sure what the grown-ups were talking about. Caroline tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her cheeks coloring with a vulnerable flush. "Christian, it's complicated," she answered, choosing her words carefully. "I was young. We both were. You left for that internship in New York, remember? At the time I thought you'd come back in a few months, or maybe I'd join you. But then you got that incredible offer, and Her voice cracked a little. "I guess I never found the right time to tell you." Christian's jaw tightened. Could he be angry? He'd left her, after all, chasing his own ambitions without looking back. He'd never asked the crucial question. Did she want to come along? Did she want to remain part of his life? He had assumed she would, if she wanted to, but he never truly gave her a clear path or invitation. And then the distance, phone calls dwindling, random emails replaced by new life chapters. He realized with a jolt that, in his single-minded drive, he might have ignored signals she'd tried to send. He noticed Caroline's hands wringing in her lap. "I got pregnant not long after you left," she said, lowering her gaze. "At first I thought I'd tell you immediately. But time slipped by. And soon I saw how well you were doing. You were sending me these big updates about your success. Everything you were building. It seemed like you were so happy and unstoppable. I thought maybe I shouldn't burden you. And then I convinced myself you wouldn't want it." Christian's heartbeat thundered. "So you decided on your own? That I wouldn't want to be involved?" His tone was taut, though not quite accusatory, just trembling with shock, heartbreak, and regret. "Caroline, that was never your burden alone. I should have known. Tears glimmered in Caroline's eyes. She struggled to hold them in, looking sideways to check if Emily was listening. But Emily had hopped off the chair and was now examining a big cardboard stand advertising family Easter vacations, happily counting all the bunny ears she could spot. "She grew up without a father," Caroline said in a ragged whisper. "I tried to fill that gap the best I could. I worked 2 part-time jobs, tried to keep a decent little apartment for us, and yes, I showed her pictures of you once, just once, on her birthday, when she asked if everyone has a dad. She latched onto that image and, well, clearly she recognized you." Christian swallowed. "I'm sorry," he offered. He wanted to say more, to express the swirling storm of emotions inside him: shock that Caroline had spent years struggling, guilt that he'd never known Emily even existed, sadness at missing her first words and first steps. There was no simple way to convey all that to Caroline right here in the middle of an airport. But he tried. "You must have felt so alone. I never meant for any of this to happen." There was a moment of stillness between them, the echoes of the overhead speaker announcing flight departures a distant drone. Christian studied Caroline's face, and she looked back at him, tears still threatening to spill. In that shared gaze, he felt the weight of years lost, conversations they should have had, letters that were never sent, phone calls that were too short or too late. Emily, having counted enough colorful bunnies, returned to them. She stretched out her arms to Christian. Without thinking, he gently scooped her up, and she settled into his lap. The motion was so natural, it shocked him. He realized how tiny she was, how her entire weight in his arms meant something indescribably profound. A voice in his head whispered, "This is your daughter." Feeling the warmth of her small body, Christian nearly forgot to breathe. Tentatively, he asked, "Emily, do you like airplanes?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I never got on one before. Mom says it's expensive, but I watch them from our window. They have the lights that blink." Christian felt his throat tighten. He had traveled on planes countless times, dozens, maybe hundreds of flights, always in first or business class. He had never once thought about how that could be special, how a child might see that as an unimaginable adventure. It was a small but heavy reminder of all the opportunities in his life that he'd taken for granted, experiences that should have been shared. Caroline spoke up gently. "Emily, sweetie, why don't we go get you a snack? I'm sure we could find something Easter-themed. Maybe a chocolate bunny or something." The little girl beamed. "Yes, please." Caroline shifted her glance back to Christian. "But the stores are that way," she said, nodding her head in the direction opposite to the gates. "I don't know if you have time." He squeezed Emily's shoulder, guiding her off his lap so he could stand. His mind replayed the finality of the gate agent's voice, the overhead announcements, the knowledge that the plane was long gone. "I already missed my flight," he reminded Caroline softly. "My business partners will survive a day without me, or a week, or however long this takes." The awe on Caroline's face was unmistakable. In the years she'd known him, he'd never opted out of work, never allowed a single opportunity to slip through his fingers. And yet here he was, turning his back on one of his biggest deals. "Then let's get a snack," Caroline said, her voice laced with cautious hope. As they walked together through the terminal, Emily in the lead, Christian felt strangely calm. Perhaps it was the intangible sense of relief in acknowledging this child, or maybe it was simply the echo of something he had forgotten he could feel. Genuine human connection. He insisted on paying for the snacks, ignoring Caroline's mild protests. Emily squealed in delight when he handed her a bunny-shaped cookie. She showed it off, claiming it had a chocolate nose. Christian stood behind her, affection in his eyes, although internally he wrestled with a million questions. Where did they live? How did Caroline manage all this time? Where did Emily go to school? Did she have friends, a favorite game, a bedtime story she liked to hear every night? A wave of guilt coursed through him. How could he possibly make up for such a gap? Yet another question lurked just behind these thoughts, creeping in with each uncertain breath. Could Caroline ever forgive him for leaving? Was there a chance for him to be in their lives now? As though sensing his inner turmoil, Caroline caught his gaze. "We don't have to solve everything tonight," she murmured. "Honestly, I'm still not even sure how to handle all of this, but I suppose we should talk, maybe somewhere quieter than the airport." Christian let out a shaky sigh. "Absolutely," he agreed. "I'll get us a ride to a hotel lounge or anywhere you'd feel comfortable. We have time." Emily tugged on Christian's sleeve. "Are you staying with us for Easter, Mr. Christian?" Her large, hopeful eyes made him ache inside. Gently, he corrected, "Christian is my name, but you can call me Daddy if you want." Even the words felt surreal but also oddly natural. Caroline looked as though tears might spill again. She laid a hand softly on Emily's shoulder. Let's just take this step by step." They finished the cookies and sat in silence for a moment, watching travelers rush past with suitcases and strollers, hearing flight announcements they didn't heed. Christian's phone vibrated constantly in his jacket pocket, but he ignored it. For the first time in years, business felt secondary, overshadowed by something bigger, his own child. Suddenly, Emily hopped off the seat and pointed to a giant Easter display by the window, featuring a big pastel statue of an Easter bunny. She looked up at Christian, her eyes brimming with excitement. "Will you come see the big bunny with me?" Caroline gave a small laugh through her lingering tears. Christian smiled, a little uncertain, but his heart was swelling with a new kind of emotion. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'd love to see the big Easter bunny with you." They walked toward the display as any normal family might do, the child brimming with glee between two parents who were still grappling with 1,000 unanswered questions, and the echoes of a past that had never truly died. Because one thing was clear now, Christian Martins had missed his flight, and in doing so, he might just be on the brink of discovering a life he had overlooked for far too long. Christian found himself in the back seat of a rideshare car, with Caroline seated beside him and Emily perched between them, her small fingers fiddling with the seatbelt, her eyes shining at the nighttime city lights sliding past the windows. The air outside was crisp, a lingering reminder that though it was Easter, winter's chill hadn't fully released its hold. He'd never paid much attention to how the city looked at night from a normal car window. Usually, he'd be on a private shuttle to a deluxe hotel or in the back of a corporate black SUV with tinted windows, finalizing emails. But now, the only thing that mattered was the presence of this little girl leaning her head on Caroline's arm, occasionally glancing his way with a trusting smile. As the car navigated the main road away from the airport, Christian considered all the calls and texts he'd deliberately ignored. His business associates would be in a frenzy, but for once, he couldn't muster the energy to care. In the reflection of the window, he saw Caroline's reflection, serious and thoughtful. He wished, somewhat desperately, that this moment had arrived under different circumstances, one where he'd known about Emily from the start, where he'd supported Caroline through her pregnancy, or at least had some say in how he might be a part of his daughter's life. That last thought sent a wave of emotion rolling through him. My daughter. He hadn't said it out loud, but the realization rang in his mind every time Emily's eyes flicked in his direction. All the time he'd lost stung like a fresh bruise on his conscience. The driver cleared his throat. "Any specific hotel in mind?" he asked, trying to confirm their destination. Caroline spoke softly. I'm not sure. Maybe something that's not too extravagant, Christian. Emily and I usually stay in simpler places." Christian felt an ache in his chest. He knew how to navigate 5-star hotels without breaking a sweat, but he also knew that was not Caroline's comfort zone. And he didn't want to overwhelm Emily, who might have never stepped foot in an upscale lobby with its marble floors and golden chandeliers. "Let's find a mid-range place near the waterfront," he said, remembering a business associate once mentioning a decent little hotel that overlooked the water. It wasn't the grandest, but it was comfortable and family-friendly. "How about that?" Caroline nodded in agreement. Emily gave a squeak of excitement, clearly enchanted by anything described as near the waterfront. When they arrived, the place was modest yet welcoming, a small sign glowing softly against the dark sky. The lobby had a nautical theme, some model ships in glass cases, paintings of sailboats, and plush blue carpets. Emily's eyes lit up at the sight of a decorative aquarium near the reception desk, her nose nearly touching the glass while a bright yellow fish flitted by. Christian approached the front desk and booked 2 rooms, one for Caroline and Emily, and another for himself. The receptionist, a chipper young man, handed over 2 key cards. As Christian accepted them, a wave of surreal clarity surged through him. Just that morning, he'd been reviewing slides for a high-stakes business meeting overseas. Now he was juggling hotel keys to ensure comfort for a child he'd just discovered he had. Caroline stood nearby, Emily's hand clutched in hers. The tension between the adults was palpable but subdued, each unsure how to address the deep rift of unspoken emotion. All 3 of them walked to the elevator, stepping inside as the doors closed with a gentle chime. In the softly lit hallway, Christian followed them to their room first, not wanting Caroline to carry the burden of Emily's suitcase alone. Though it was just a small carry-on bag from their earlier attempt at some Easter weekend outing, Caroline had vaguely alluded to visiting a relative but evidently changed her mind. Christian insisted. He gently set the suitcase down inside their room. Emily ran in, her footsteps muffled by the carpet, and she squealed to see the pair of neatly made beds with pastel-colored comforters. "It's so nice," she said, plopping herself on one bed and bouncing experimentally. For a moment, Christian smiled. Her delight was infectious. Caroline looked around, relieved. "It's lovely, Christian, thank you." He cleared his throat, uncertain. "Sure. Is there anything else you might need? I can step out and find a store if you forgot anything." She shook her head. "We're fine. She's had her snack earlier, and we have enough for the night." She paused. "Maybe tomorrow we can—" She didn't finish the sentence, though the implication hung in the air. "Maybe tomorrow we can talk, figure out next steps, or decide where to go from here." Emily flopped onto her back with a dramatic sigh, gazing up at the ceiling. "Mommy, do we have to go right to bed? Can't we watch a little TV?" Caroline smiled. "Just for a few minutes, sweetie. We need to unwind, okay?" The child gave an enthusiastic nod and crawled toward the pillows to grab the remote. Christian hovered at the doorway, not sure if he should exit, say goodnight, or linger. Caroline caught his hesitation. "It's okay," she said softly. "If you want to grab some rest, do that, but if you're not tired, maybe we could chat for a minute in the hallway?" He nodded, grateful for a chance to speak without Emily overhearing. "Sure." They stepped out, the corridor's overhead lights casting a gentle glow. The door clicked behind them, leaving Emily presumably flipping channels for a cartoon. For a few seconds, neither adult spoke. Caroline folded her arms as if bracing herself. "Christian," she began with an uneven sigh. "I'm sorry for ambushing you like this. I never planned it. If you had just gone on your flight, I wouldn't have known you were here." He shook his head. "I'm the one who should apologize. I left you behind." His eyes flickered with remorse. "I was so focused on my goals, I never asked what you needed, or if you'd come with me, or if we could figure out a future. I just assumed things. I took the first big break I got and I took off." Caroline stared at the floor. "I was upset at first, of course. But then, when I realized I was pregnant, I was scared, Christian. I didn't know how to be a mother, especially on my own. I kept telling myself I'd contact you, but the longer I waited, the more complicated it felt. And then I saw pictures of you on magazine covers, the success story, the unstoppable wunderkind." Her voice wobbled. "I honestly thought maybe you wouldn't want me, or her." He rubbed a hand over his face, raw regret making him swallow hard. "I can't undo the past, but I'm here now." Her gaze rose, searching his face. "What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly," he admitted, "but I've missed so much already. Her first everything. If you'll let me, I'd like to be part of her life. And I need to be sure you're okay too." Caroline glanced toward the door where inside Emily was presumably immersed in a cartoon or drifting off from the day's excitement. "Emily's a bright kid, Christian. She's sweet, trusting, and always full of questions. I've done the best I could, but I can't deny that we've struggled sometimes. I don't have a fancy job. I sew, I do odd gigs, but it's barely enough." He tentatively placed a hand on her shoulder. "You shouldn't have to struggle alone anymore. I want to help." She bit her lip, tears threatening once more. "I'm worried about how Emily will handle this. She's dreamed of a dad her whole life. She used to ask if her father was some hero, like in fairy tales. I don't want her heart broken if you—" She trailed off, evidently afraid to say the words. "If I disappear again," he finished quietly, the weight of guilt pressing on him. "I won't vanish, Caroline. I promise." They stayed silent for a moment, letting that vow settle in the hushed hallway. The faint sound of a cartoon drifted through the door, a reminder that a little girl on the other side was likely waiting for them, excited and unsuspecting of the complexity unfolding just beyond her hearing. Finally, Caroline spoke, her tone laced with both caution and a shred of hope. "All right, let's figure this out slowly. But tomorrow, let's spend Easter together. Emily's never really had a real Easter celebration, beyond me hiding some plastic eggs in our tiny yard." Christian forced a small smile. "I'd like that. Actually, Easter was always a big deal in my family when I was a kid. I remember searching for eggs all over the backyard, my mom sneaking chocolate into the strangest corners. We could do something special for Emily." Caroline nodded, a flicker of optimism warming her face. "Sounds good." He shifted his weight, feeling a tremor of relief that they were, at the very least, open to this new beginning. "Let me call down to the concierge and see if they know of any local Easter events, or maybe we can set up something fun ourselves." She squeezed her arms around herself again, protective and vulnerable. "Thanks, Christian," she whispered. "It's more than I expected." He parted his lips to reply, but words didn't come easily. Instead, he let his hand briefly graze hers, a gesture that said more than any sentence he could craft. Then, noticing her exhaustion, he told her, "Try to get some rest." She nodded, stepping quietly back into the room. As the door softly latched, Christian found himself alone in the hallway, heart pounding. The revelations, the heartbreak, the yearning, it all pulsed through his mind like a living thing. Finally, he headed to his own room a few doors down, letting himself in. The lights were off, the bed perfectly made, and a small lamp flickered on the nightstand. He sank down on the edge of the bed, taking out his phone to face the barrage of missed calls and urgent texts. He scrolled through them. Yes, his CFO demanded an explanation. Yes, the investors were threatening to back out if he didn't show up in time. And yes, some part of him was anxious about the fallout. Yet, as he pictured Emily's beaming face and the trembling emotion in Caroline's eyes, a strange sense of peace diffused through him. It was as though fate had finally crashed into his well-ordered life, showing him that sometimes the heart was more important than the bottom line. He typed a quick message to his CFO, something vague about a personal emergency, and turned off the phone again, placing it face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow, he thought, pressing a hand over his chest as if trying to steady his thudding heart. Tomorrow he'd wake up and spend Easter with his daughter, a child he hadn't known existed until hours ago. Tomorrow would be a day of beginnings. With that fragile hope, Christian lay down, his mind spinning with visions of pastel-colored eggs, chocolate bunnies, and a second chance with both Caroline and Emily. Bright morning light seeped through the thin curtains of Christian's hotel room, stirring him from fitful sleep. He lay still for a moment, letting disjointed memories of the previous day reorganize themselves in his mind. The frenzied dash through the airport, the moment he felt a child's small arms around his leg, Carolyn's trembling confession, Emily's bright eyes calling him Daddy. He pushed himself up on one elbow, running a hand through his hair. The digital clock glowed with the time, 7:14 a.m. For a moment, he simply breathed, absorbing the reality that he wasn't waking up in some luxury suite overseas. Instead, he was here, at a modest waterfront hotel he'd chosen for the sake of not overwhelming his newly discovered daughter and the woman he had once loved. The phone on the nightstand was still off, lying face down like a silent sentinel of all the voicemails and demands he'd chosen to shut out. As the events of the past 24 hours came rushing back, Christian swung his legs off the bed and stood, tension coiling in his shoulders. There was so much to deal with. The conversation with Caroline, the next steps for Emily, and yes, the weight of 1,000,000 business obligations piling up in his absence. But first, Easter. He quickly showered, changed into a casual button-down shirt and dark jeans, simple, comfortable clothes he rarely wore except on rare days off. Today, of all days, he wanted to be more approachable. And if he was going to celebrate Easter with a 6-year-old, wearing a stiff suit and tie felt ridiculously out of place. His stomach gave a quiet protest, reminding him he hadn't eaten much yesterday beyond a quick airport snack. As he stepped out of his room into the hallway, he caught himself scanning for Caroline's door. The corridor was quiet. Presumably Caroline and Emily might still be sleeping, or maybe they were already awake. He hesitated, not wanting to barge in and disrupt them. Instead, he took the elevator down to the lobby. The morning manager, a pleasant older woman, greeted him with a cheerful wave. "Morning, sir," she said. "Happy Easter." He managed a smile. "Happy Easter to you too. I'm wondering if the hotel has any plans for guests to celebrate, like an egg hunt or breakfast event?" She nodded vigorously. "Indeed we do. We have a little pop-up Easter brunch in our dining area. Families are welcome to come down, and we have a small egg hunt planned outside on the lawn around 10 o'clock if the weather cooperates." Christian's spirits lifted. This was perfect. He thanked her and then noticed a small display of Easter-themed items on a corner table, pastel baskets, plastic eggs, and tiny plush rabbits, possibly for sale or complimentary for families. He was about to ask when a gentle voice called from behind him, "Christian?" Turning, he saw Caroline approaching, holding Emily's hand. The child clutched a stuffed toy, some kind of worn-out plush bunny with an ear that looked half-detached. Caroline's eyes were still a bit puffy with sleep, but her expression was calm. Emily, on the other hand, looked bright-eyed and curious. Immediately, Emily let go of Caroline's hand and skipped over to Christian. "Hi," she said, beaming. "It's Easter. Did the bunny come?" Christian felt a surge of warmth in his chest. He crouched down so he was closer to her eye level. "Good morning, Emily. I was just talking to the manager. There's going to be a little egg hunt outside. Would you like that?" She practically burst with excitement. "Yes. Mommy said maybe the Easter bunny would bring chocolate eggs. Do you think he left some?" "I think so," Christian replied, glancing at Caroline with a smile that held layers of unspoken hope. "We can check after breakfast." Caroline joined them by the Easter display, giving Christian a small nod of gratitude for looking after their morning plans. "Hi," she said softly. "Sleep well?" "Well enough," Christian answered, straightening to his full height. "How about you two?" Caroline looked down at Emily, brushing a hand over the girl's hair. "We slept okay. She was still buzzing with excitement, though. Didn't get her usual 8 hours. Emily piped up, "I'm not tired," to prove the point, then wandered off to examine the pastel baskets and plastic eggs. In that moment of partial privacy, Caroline turned her gaze back to Christian. "Thank you for offering to do this. She hasn't really had a father figure, so these small holiday memories mean a lot." He reached out, gently squeezing her hand in a fleeting gesture before releasing it again. "I want her to have a special day. Let's get breakfast, yeah?" Together, they stepped into the hotel's dining area, which was modest but cozy. A few families were already seated. The air smelled of coffee, pancakes, bacon, and scrambled eggs. Off to one side, a small buffet was set up with pastries, fruit, and cereal. The decor featured discreet paper bunny garlands hung along the walls, and children's laughter floated over from a neighboring table. Christian guided Caroline and Emily to a table near a window overlooking the lawn. The sky was a little overcast, but the forecast had promised the clouds would part later on. As they settled into seats, Emily bounced with excitement, scanning the buffet with wide eyes. "Can I get orange juice, Mommy?" she asked, wiggling in her chair. Caroline nodded. "Yes, you can, but let's walk to the buffet together so you don't spill." Christian watched them for a moment, feeling an odd surge of pride just seeing them do something so normal, like picking out breakfast. In a small way, it almost felt like he was glimpsing the everyday life he'd missed, but was now being allowed to join. While Caroline helped Emily pick some fruit and cereal, Christian poured himself coffee and grabbed a plate of simple breakfast items. He tried to not overthink it. The swirl of business decisions weighed in the back of his mind, but he forced himself to stay present. When they settled at the table, Emily giggled about the shape of her pancake, an uneven circle that she insisted looked like the Easter Bunny's face. Caroline coaxed her to eat fruit first. Every now and then, Christian felt Caroline's gaze on him, an unreadable expression in her eyes. It was as though she were trying to measure how seriously he was stepping into his fatherly role, or perhaps she was just feeling the same swirl of emotions he was. The scene was so normal it almost felt surreal. An Easter brunch, the hum of conversation, Emily giggling over her discovery that strawberry jam tasted great on pancakes. "Mommy, can I have more juice?" Emily asked, already slurping the remnants of the first cup. "Sure," Caroline answered, "but water after that, okay?" Christian stood. "I'll get it. What kind do you want?" "Orange," Emily repeated, bouncing. He walked to the juice dispenser, filling another small cup. As he did, he overheard a few other guests chatting about the egg hunt. Someone mentioned that an employee dressed as the Easter Bunny would be coming out with baskets full of candy. Christian smiled at the thought. Caroline watched him return with Emily's juice. Once Emily was busy sipping, Caroline said in a gentle voice, "She's really happy you're here." He paused, carefully setting the cup in front of Emily. "I'm happy too." The words felt raw and genuine. "I'm sorry it took so long." Caroline nodded, her expression torn between relief and lingering sorrow. "Let's try not to dwell on that today. I want Emily to have a memorable Easter. We can talk more in depth later." "Agreed," he said softly. After they finished eating, hotel staff began to guide children outside to the lawn. The weather had indeed brightened. Patches of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the green grass and a few small shrubs where plastic eggs could be hidden. Other guests brought their little ones. Some were in bright pastel dresses, others in casual t-shirts and jeans. A few harried parents juggled cameras, trying to capture every precious moment. Emily practically pulled Christian and Caroline by the hands, bounding into the open air. The lawn overlooked a modest waterfront where a boardwalk curved along the shore. The breeze carried a faint smell of salt water, reminding Christian of family vacations he'd taken as a boy, vacations he'd left behind when corporate life took over. Staff members appeared, some wearing bunny ears to scatter plastic eggs behind bushes around the edges of benches under decorative statues. Emily clutched a small basket that Caroline had purchased in the lobby, a simple pink one with a handle. As soon as someone announced, "Ready, set, go!" the kids darted off. Emily squealed in delight, charging toward the nearest bush. Christian trailed after her, simultaneously excited and nervous. It felt important that he be part of these small joys. With each bright plastic egg Emily retrieved, she turned and held it up to him. "Look, Daddy!" she exclaimed, the word Daddy still rattling his heart, but in a sweet way he couldn't quite describe. "Great job," he encouraged, stepping forward to help open one of the eggs. A small chocolate was inside. Emily's eyes gleamed. Caroline stood nearby, watching them with a gentle smile, though Christian caught the shimmer of tears in her gaze from time to time. She must have felt a swirl of complicated emotions, relief that Emily was happy, sorrow that Christian's fatherly presence was so new, and maybe hope that they might salvage a future from the pieces of their past. As the flurry of children continued collecting eggs, Christian spotted a bright turquoise egg perched precariously on a stone ledge. "Emily, look up there!" he pointed. She gasped. "I can't reach it!" He chuckled. "I'll lift you." He gently scooped her under the arms, lifting her so she could grab the egg. She giggled, planting it triumphantly in her basket. "Got it!" Caroline came over, snapping a quick photo on her phone. "Emily, show me that egg," she said. Emily posed with it, face beaming. Christian watched the scene, something soft and unfamiliar cracking open in his chest. He realized how fleeting these childhood moments could be, and how many of them he'd already lost. But at least he was here now, giving her a proper Easter memory. Once the children had gathered most of the eggs, the staff announced the presence of a special visitor. From the hotel's side entrance, a costumed Easter bunny emerged, waving cartoonishly. The kids cheered and flocked around, and Emily pulled Christian along, wanting him by her side. Caroline stayed a little ways off, letting Emily bask in the excitement. The fluffy white bunny figure offered high fives, handed out small candy treats, and posed for pictures. Emily insisted on one with Christian on one side and her on the other, and the costumed bunny in the middle. Christian felt surprisingly at ease, even though it was the kind of cutesy, holiday-themed event he normally avoided. With Emily giggling at his side, a swirl of pastel colors around them, and Caroline's watchful smile, it felt right. After the photo, Caroline walked up, her phone still in hand. "That one's going into a scrapbook," she joked softly, though her voice held an emotional tremor. Christian offered a crooked grin. "I'd love a copy." The idea that he might keep pictures of Emily was something that, until last night, he hadn't even imagined. Another wave of kids mobbed the Easter bunny, so Emily scampered off to see if there were more treats to claim. Caroline and Christian stood by a small flower bed, the sun creeping out from behind clouds. Their eyes met, and for a moment, no words were needed. They were simply parents, proud of their child's excitement, grappling with complex histories and uncertain futures. "This is nice," Caroline said finally, voice subdued. "It is," Christian agreed. "Thank you for letting me be here." Caroline inhaled, then exhaled as if summoning courage. "We should talk later about everything. But I wanted Emily to have this morning without heavy discussions." He nodded in full agreement. "Let's go somewhere after this. Lunch, maybe? Then we can talk while Emily's busy coloring or something." A hesitant smile tugged at Caroline's lips. "That sounds like a plan, one step at a time." He reached out and for a brief moment lightly touched her arm. She didn't pull away. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Then they looked to Emily, who was gleefully showing her basket of candy to another child. He almost laughed. "Looks like she's made a new friend." Caroline's shoulders relaxed. "She's always been friendly like that. She's tough, though. She's gone through some rough times with me, but she's always had this bright spirit." Christian watched Emily's exuberance, feeling a sting of shame at having missed the last 6 years, but also something else, the stirrings of hope. He had a chance to make amends, to be a father to this little girl who didn't doubt for a second that he belonged in her life. And maybe, just maybe, he could be something to Caroline as well, though he knew that would require more than a few Easter eggs and shared smiles. As the event wound down, staff began leading families back toward the hotel, inviting them to lounge on the patio or head to the boardwalk. Caroline gestured to Emily, who bounded over. "Should we see the water?" Caroline asked. Emily's head bobbed vigorously. "Yes, please." Christian extended a hand to Emily, and she grabbed it eagerly. Then Caroline took Emily's other hand. Together, they walked down the gentle slope of grass toward the waterfront path, a trio united by fragile new bonds and a swirl of second chances. In Christian's mind, the day had already surpassed his expectations. He had no illusions that the rest of his life's challenges would vanish in a puff of pastel confetti. But for now, as the three of them ventured into the sunshine, the possibility of healing and family felt closer than ever. The late morning sun glimmered over the water's surface, creating a mosaic of dancing light. Emily raced a few steps ahead on the boardwalk, arms outstretched as if she were flying. Caroline and Christian followed at a leisurely pace, side by side. The air carried a gentle tang of salt, mixed with the scent of freshly roasted coffee wafting from a nearby cafe. They hadn't said much since leaving the hotel's Easter event, and the chatter of other families strolling around provided a comfortable buffer. Caroline sensed Christian's thoughts drifting between his newly discovered role as Emily's father and the countless business obligations likely piling up on his phone. A part of her felt guilty for not telling him sooner, robbed him of these early years, and perhaps deprived Emily of a stable father figure. Yet she also remembered the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, too proud or too uncertain to reach out. "Mommy," Emily called, spinning around on the boardwalk. "Can we see if there are any boats?" Caroline smiled. "Sure, sweetie. Let's walk down to the docks." They headed to a small pier that stretched into the bay. Several fishing boats rocked with the tide, and farther out, a handful of pleasure yachts glided by. Emily perched on a bench, mesmerized by the sight of seagulls swooping in search of scraps. Christian settled beside her, leaning one hand on the back of the bench. "It's pretty here," he remarked quietly, as if speaking too loudly might break the fragile peace. "I don't remember the last time I took a moment like this." Caroline nodded, watching Emily's ponytails bounce as the breeze caught them. "It's nice, isn't it? I'm usually too busy or too tired to appreciate it much, but I bring Emily here once in a while. She loves looking at the boats and the birds." He studied her face with a thoughtful gaze. "Caroline, would you and Emily mind if I took you both to lunch somewhere? A place where we can sit and talk privately. Maybe she can color or read while we talk, but we should discuss the details." She drew a steadying breath. "I think that's a good idea." They spotted a small seaside cafe near the docks, a cozy place with a covered porch and a view of the water. The outdoor tables were spaced out enough to provide a modicum of privacy. By now, Emily was proclaiming that she was starving, so it seemed the perfect spot. As they settled at a table under a navy blue umbrella, Christian waved down a waitress and ordered drinks for them: orange juice for Emily, iced tea for Caroline, and a sparkling water for himself. Emily, still brimming with Easter excitement, asked if she could color. The waitress provided a small basket of crayons and a kid's menu with pictures of fish and boats to fill in. Caroline watched Emily hunch over the page, crayons already strewn about, then turned to Christian with a mixture of resolution and anxiety. "So," she said softly, "I guess we should talk about logistics and about you and her and us, I suppose." Christian nodded, leaning forward, his expression open. "Yes. First of all, I want you to know I'll help with anything. Financially, of course, but more than that. I want to be present. I want to catch up on who Emily is, what she likes, how she lives." Caroline's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You say that now, but you have a life in the city. Actually, multiple cities, right? You're always on a plane, traveling the world, making deals. I'm not sure how we fit into that." "I'm not sure either," he admitted. "All I know is I missed too many years. I can't go back, but I can rearrange my priorities going forward. The question is, what do you want from me, Carolyn?" Her gaze drifted to Emily, who was happily coloring a fish purple. "I used to think I needed to handle it all alone," she said, voice almost a whisper. "But now that you're here, it changes things. For Emily's sake, I'd like her to know you, if you're truly committed." "I am." His answer was immediate. "I realize there might be times I have to travel, but I'll do whatever it takes to maintain contact with her. Fly back and forth, have her come visit me, whatever arrangement you're comfortable with. We can talk to a lawyer if you want something legally formalized, so there are no misunderstandings." Caroline's shoulders seemed to ease a little, though her eyes remained guarded. "Emily's never left the state. She doesn't even have a passport or anything." A slight smile tugged at Christian's lips. "We can handle that step by step. I'm not going to whisk her off somewhere distant without your full agreement. Let's start simpler. I'll stay here for a few days, assuming that's okay with you." and get to know her routine. Then we can figure out what comes next." Caroline hesitated, looking at Emily again. The little girl occasionally glanced up, clearly sensing the serious tone, but she appeared content with her crayons for the moment. "We live in a small place," Caroline confessed. "It's not fancy or big enough to host you." "That's fine," Christian assured. "If it would help, I can rent a place nearby, an apartment or a short-term rental, so I can be around but not invade your personal space. Or I can stay in a modest hotel again, whatever feels right." Caroline nodded slowly. I might like that, just so we can get used to the idea." He reached across the table, resting his hand near hers but not quite touching. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I'm not the same person who left you all those years ago." Before she could reply, Emily piped up. "I'm done coloring!" She flipped the kids' menu to reveal her masterpiece, fish in purple, pink, and green, a bright sun above them, and a smiling stick figure that, upon closer inspection, was labeled Daddy. Another figure labeled Mommy stood next to him, while a smaller shape in between bore the name Emily. The three crude figures held hands beneath a rainbow. Christian's throat constricted. "That's beautiful, Emily," he managed, a softness in his voice that betrayed how moved he was. "Can you keep it, Daddy?" she asked, sliding the paper toward him. "So you remember me?" His heart ached with the realization that she thought he needed a reminder. "I don't need a drawing to remember you," he said, his tone gentle, "but I'd love to keep it anyway." Carefully, he folded the page in half, planning to keep it somewhere safe, maybe even in his wallet for the time being. The waitress arrived to take their orders. Emily excitedly requested a cheeseburger and fries, eyes dancing at the prospect. Caroline opted for a simple salad, while Christian chose grilled fish, explaining to Emily that he wanted to try something lighter. She scrunched her nose, teased him about not liking cheeseburgers, and he chuckled at her playful spirit. As they waited for the food, Christian asked Emily about her favorite activities, prompting an enthusiastic monologue about her school, her best friend Mia, and the neighbor's cat that wandered into their yard sometimes. Caroline interjected with small anecdotes, like how Emily was determined to learn jump rope last summer and scraped both knees but never gave up until she mastered it. Christian soaked it all in, filing each detail as if it were precious currency. He in turn told Emily a little about his work in simpler terms, describing how he helped develop new phone apps and devices. He showed her a snippet on his phone of a cartoonish kids app his company had recently partnered with. Emily's eyes widened. "You make cartoons?" He laughed. "Not exactly, but I help people make them. It's fun." She nodded vigorously, clearly impressed. Underneath the casual conversation, Caroline's gaze flicked between them, holding a mix of relief and wariness. She knew Christian was charming. He always had been. But the bigger test would be his consistency. Would he stand by his promises? The food arrived, steaming hot. They dug in, and for a while conversation meandered around Emily's commentary on how the fries tasted, crispy and yummy, and Caroline's quiet questions about whether Christian needed to call his office soon. He shrugged, deferring the topic. "They'll manage a little longer without me." Halfway through lunch, as Emily contentedly munched and occasionally sipped her juice, Christian ventured into a more serious question. "Emily," he asked softly, "how would you feel if I visited you at your house sometime, so I can see your room, your toys, and maybe help you do homework?" Her eyes shone, a big grin spreading across her face. "Yes, yes, yes. Mommy, can Daddy come tonight?" She looked between them hopefully. Caroline smiled gently but looked to Christian for his reaction. He put down his fork, swallowing the lump of emotion in his throat. "I can come by, sure, if your mom is okay with that. Maybe I can bring dinner or I can just come hang out." Caroline let out a slow breath. "That would be nice," she agreed. "But maybe not tonight. I need a little time to tidy up. It's small, and I wasn't expecting company." Emily's face fell slightly, but Christian offered a reassuring nod. "That's all right. We'll do it soon. In the meantime, maybe we can spend a few more days together like this, going places, talking." The child brightened again, reaching across the table to grab a fry from Christian's plate, giggling as she stole it. He feigned shock, adopting a playful scowl that made her giggle harder. Caroline watched them with a soft smile, her eyes glistening with gratitude, and perhaps a delicate sliver of trust forming. They finished lunch with that gentle warmth cocooning them, an unexpected semblance of a family outing. As the waitress cleared their plates, Christian settled the bill, refusing to let Caroline pay a dime. Once outside, Emily skipped ahead on the boardwalk, her basket of Easter candy rattling. Caroline and Christian hung back, matching each other's pace. "Thank you," Caroline said quietly, slipping a small wad of cash into her own pocket after he declined to accept it for splitting the meal. "For lunch, for everything. It means more than you know." Christian's eyes lingered on Emily, who was humming some tune to herself and chasing a seagull that had perched on the railing. Then he looked at Caroline, words clinging to his tongue. He had so much to say, about regret, about hope, about wanting to earn her forgiveness. But now wasn't the moment. "Let's keep walking," he said instead, offering a gentle smile. "We have a lot of catching up to do." Caroline smiled back, and together they strolled down the sunlit boardwalk behind their daughter, setting the foundation of a new beginning, uncertain but earnest, fueled by the possibility that sometimes life gives you a second chance at the people you love. Afternoon sunlight angled across the windows of the small art studio, painting the floor with soft squares of warmth. Caroline led Christian and Emily inside, flipping on a light that revealed several tables covered with art supplies. Crayons, colored pencils, tubes of acrylic paint, little jars of brushes. Canvases and sketches were propped against the walls, and a faint scent of turpentine mixed with the sweetness of fresh paper. "You rent this place?" Christian asked quietly, surveying the space with curiosity. Caroline shook her head. "I don't own it, if that's what you mean, but a friend of mine does art classes here on weekends for kids. She lets me use it sometimes when she's not around. I sew in one corner because our apartment's too cramped for me to spread out projects, and Emily loves to come here and draw. It's kind of our shared creative escape." Emily, having raced ahead, already rummaged through a box of markers. She called out, "Mommy, can I show Daddy my big painting, the one with the flowers?" Caroline nodded, pointing to a cloth-draped easel in the corner. "Go ahead, sweetie." Emily dashed over, carefully pulling the cloth away, revealing a bright painting of a meadow, colorful blooms under a sunny sky. Though the technique was childlike, the bursts of color showed enthusiasm and a surprising knack for mixing shades. Christian moved closer, genuine awe on his face. "Wow," he murmured, crouching down to get a better look. "Did you do this all by yourself?" "Mommy helped a little," Emily admitted, "but I chose the colors. We have a real flower garden in the yard at home. Well, a small one. I wanted it to look bigger." Caroline approached, her voice laced with gentle pride. "She's been learning about color theory from my friend who teaches classes here. Emily's into everything creative, painting, drawing, even little craft sculptures. It's the one area I can't fully guide her in because I'm all about sewing and fabrics, but she does pretty well on her own." A wave of tenderness made Christian's throat tighten. He thought of the countless board meetings he'd endured, giving presentations on new app innovations or encryption standards. Yet none of that felt as important as hearing about how Emily mixed red and yellow to make the perfect orange for a bright tulip. He placed a hand lightly on Emily's shoulder. "This is incredible, kiddo. I'm impressed." Her cheeks dimpled in a delighted grin. "Thanks, Daddy." Once again, that simple word, Daddy, stirred in him. If only he'd been around to see her first scribbled drawings. He swallowed the regret, forcing himself to focus on the present. "You're really talented," he said. Emily beamed under the praise. Then her eyes flickered to the big clock on the wall. "Mommy, you said we had to go to the store for groceries," she reminded. "Did we forget?" Caroline winced as if she'd momentarily lost track of chores in the swirl of emotions. "Oh, right. We've got almost nothing in the fridge for dinner. I usually do a Sunday shop, but—" She trailed off, glancing at Christian. Our day took a different turn. He nodded. "I can go with you both if that's okay. We could cook something together or pick out something easy, unless you prefer to eat out again?" Caroline smiled hesitantly. "Actually, a home-cooked meal would be a nice change. I've been living on quick fixes all week." "Let's do it," he agreed. "I'd love to see how you two live day to day." Her expression flashed with uncertainty, but she gave a careful nod. "All right, let's pack up here, and we'll head to the grocery store. Then, maybe we can cook at my place. Just be warned, it's tiny." Christian offered a gentle smile. "I don't mind." Together they tidied the art supplies while Emily proudly stored her painting away in a corner. Then they switched off the lights and made their way out of the studio, stepping into the mild afternoon sun. Emily hummed a little tune, skipping down the sidewalk between them, her tiny hands occasionally grazing Christian's or Caroline's. In the parking lot, Caroline opened her older model sedan, rummaging for something. Christian quietly noted the worn upholstery and the slight squeak of the door, indications that this car had seen better days. He glanced back at the street where his own car, or rather, the car service he'd used, had dropped him off earlier. He felt a pang of guilt realizing how easy it had always been for him to rely on comfortable transportation while Caroline struggled with day-to-day matters. "You can follow me in your rental car if you want," Caroline suggested. "If that's easier." Christian hesitated. "Well, I only had a ride share earlier. I can call one again, or maybe I can ride with you, unless that's awkward." She considered. "Emily's booster seat is in the back. But sure, if we all fit, that'd be fine. The store's just a few blocks away." So Christian slipped into the passenger seat. Emily clambered into her booster in the back, and Caroline took the wheel. The car rumbled gently as Caroline started the engine. Emily chattered happily the whole ride, pointing out local landmarks. "There's the donut shop that has my favorite sprinkle donuts. And there's the playground. Daddy, you have to see it. There's a big slide." Christian turned around in his seat to see her wide-eyed excitement, feeling an almost dizzy mixture of pride and sadness. He had no idea she loved sprinkle donuts or that there was a giant slide in her local park. How many other details had he missed? In less than 10 minutes, they arrived at a modest grocery store. It was smaller than the sprawling supermarkets Christian was used to, but it seemed cozy and familiar, with baskets of fresh produce stacked under awnings outside. Caroline grabbed a cart, Emily hopped on the front bar, and Christian followed with a self-conscious sense that he was stepping into their real life, a routine that had never included him. Caroline started down the produce aisle, selecting some onions, carrots, and a small bag of potatoes. Emily insisted on picking a broccoli crown, which she called little trees, though Caroline teased her that she rarely ate them without cheddar sauce. Christian silently took note, trying to memorize what they liked. "So what's for dinner?" he asked lightly, wanting to contribute. Caroline shrugged, glancing around. "I was thinking maybe a simple chicken stew or roasted veggies and chicken. I'm not a master chef, but I can whip that up fairly easily." Christian nodded. "Sounds good. Let's do it. I can help chop whatever needs chopping." Emily giggled. "Daddy chopping broccoli trees. I want to watch that." Caroline raised an eyebrow, glancing back at Christian. "You sure? I'm not sure you're used to everyday kitchen work. I remember you ordering out a lot back then." He gave a sheepish smile. "I might be a little out of practice, but I can manage the basics. Promise I won't chop a finger off." With the plan set, they moved through the aisles, selecting chicken, broth, spices, bread rolls, and a small carton of milk. Caroline paused at the dairy case, comparing prices. Christian noticed her hesitation and realized she was doing mental math, trying to stay within a tight budget. Impulsively, he slid his hand over hers, giving it a light squeeze. "Get whatever brand you prefer," he said quietly. "I'm covering this." Her cheeks tinted. "Christian, you don't have to—" "Please," he insisted gently. "Let me. You've carried this burden alone for so long." She relented with a nod, though her expression showed traces of unease. He tried to respect her pride while also stepping up. Somewhere in the middle was a balance they'd have to find together. At the checkout, Caroline automatically reached for her wallet, but Christian slipped his card to the cashier before she could protest. Emily watched the process with curious eyes. "You're nice, Daddy," she declared, as if bestowing a royal compliment. He bent down to her level, tapping her nose lightly with a finger. "I'm just doing what dads do." That statement lingered in the air. A man trying to reorient his life toward fatherhood he'd never practiced. Groceries bagged, they returned to the car. The afternoon sun had dipped a bit lower, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Emily suggested they play music, so Caroline flicked on the radio to a soft pop station while they headed home. Christian recognized a handful of the songs, ones he might have heard in passing while on hold during a call. But now, hearing them in the car with Caroline and Emily was different, lighter, more joyful, a glimpse of normalcy he'd rarely allowed himself. Soon they pulled into a quiet neighborhood of small houses and low fences. Caroline turned onto a narrow street lined with older cars. Finally, she parked in front of a modest, single-story home with peeling paint. A battered mailbox hung crookedly by the driveway. "We rent," Caroline said, as if anticipating his judgment. "It's not much, but it's ours. We've been here for about 3 years." Christian nodded, forcing a neutral tone. "It looks cozy." He observed the little yard, a patch of grass with a few bright flowers near the walkway. A plastic tricycle lay on its side, and a sagging porch swing squeaked in a faint breeze. Caroline gathered the grocery bags, and Emily grabbed her plush bunny from the back seat. Christian offered to take most of the bags. Together, they walked up the short path. Caroline unlocked the door, revealing a living room that was snug but homely. An older couch, a small TV stand, a coffee table strewn with crayons and coloring books. In the corner, a sewing machine perched on a folding table, half-finished fabric pinned under its needle. Emily hopped in with excitement. "Welcome to our house, Daddy," she said, flinging her arms wide as if presenting a grand mansion. Christian's gaze swept over the space, noticing the faint scuff marks on the walls, the pictures taped up here and there. Child drawings, postcards. Despite the wear, it radiated warmth, a testament to Caroline's efforts to make it a real home for Emily. "Thanks for having me," he said, voice subdued with emotion he tried not to show too plainly. Caroline cleared her throat. "I'll show you around. There's not much to see, though. Living room, kitchen, my bedroom, Emily's bedroom." Emily tugged Christian's hand. "Come see my room first." With groceries in his other arm, Christian glanced at Caroline, who nodded. He followed Emily down a short hallway into a small bedroom. The walls were painted a pale yellow, the furniture mismatched. A twin bed with bright sheets, stuffed animals lined up near the pillows, and drawings pinned on every inch of the wall. In a corner stood a small shelf with picture books, a couple of dolls, and more crayons. He carefully set the groceries in the hallway for a moment, stepping in to admire the pictures Emily proudly showed off. "See this one?" she said, pointing to a crayon rendition of a cat chasing a butterfly. "I drew that after a kitty came in our yard. I wanted it to catch the butterfly so it wouldn't go away." Christian nodded, leaning in. "It's beautiful. You're really good at drawing animals, too." A grin spread across her face. Then she pulled him to another corner, where a single photograph in a cheap frame rested on a shelf. It showed Caroline younger and smiling, with Emily as a toddler on her lap. Christian recognized Caroline's eyes, her hair longer back then, and Emily's baby face. No father in the photo. Of course not. He hadn't been there. It's the only baby picture I have, Emily explained, noticing his stare. Mommy said we lost some in a flood, but that's okay. I like this one. Christian swallowed the ache rising in his chest. That's a very special photo. You both look happy. Caroline appeared in the doorway, quietly observing. We were, she said softly. We still are sometimes. It's been a journey. He turned toward her, about to say something when Emily tugged on his sleeve again. Can we cook dinner now? I'm hungry again. She made an exaggerated, hungry face. Christian mustered a small laugh. Absolutely. Let's go make that chicken dinner. Maybe you can help me wash the vegetables? She nodded enthusiastically, dashing out to the hallway. Caroline watched her go, then lingered a moment in Emily's room, meeting Christian's eyes. They didn't speak, but the air between them was thick with unspoken truths, regrets, hopes, second chances. He gave her a faint, reassuring smile before collecting the grocery bags. In the small kitchen, they set up a makeshift assembly line, Emily rinsing vegetables in the sink, Christian carefully chopping, Caroline seasoning the chicken. It was cramped, with only one narrow counter and an older stove, but they managed. Occasionally, Emily shouted directions like a little head chef, making them laugh. Caroline explained that she rarely cooked big meals. They usually stuck to simple dishes. Christian, though not an expert, found it oddly comforting to measure spices, stir the pot of simmering broth, and watch the food come together under their combined effort. It was a microcosm of what he'd missed out on, small daily tasks that became a family's bond. As the meal finished cooking, evening light streamed through the tiny window above the sink, casting long shadows on the modest linoleum floor. They decided to eat at the living room's small dining table, essentially a folded-out piece of furniture that barely fit 3 chairs. Emily sat between them, proudly announcing she'd helped a lot with dinner. When they finally tasted the chicken stew, both Christian and Caroline praised Emily's assist with dramatic enthusiasm, making her giggle. The meal was simple, warm, and somehow perfect. Outside the window, a faint glow of street lamps flickered on, welcoming nightfall in the quiet neighborhood. After dinner, they chatted lazily about the day, Easter eggs, the boardwalk stroll, the upcoming week. Emily half-dozed at the table, her eyelids drooping from all the excitement. Caroline gently nudged her to brush teeth and get into pajamas. Emily dragged herself away, yawning, leaving Christian and Caroline alone in the living room. A hush settled, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Christian gazed around the snug space, thinking how different it was from the sleek penthouse where he spent most nights. He felt foreign and yet strangely anchored. Caroline gathered plates, stacking them to take to the sink. Christian stood, motioning to help. "I can wash," he offered softly. She paused, turning to him. "I appreciate it," she said, her voice quiet. "But it's okay. I'll do them quickly. Maybe you can say goodnight to Emily." He nodded, a tremor of emotion in his chest. "Sure." Making his way down the short hall, he found Emily's room. The overhead light was off, a small lamp casting a gentle glow, and Emily was already under the covers, hugging her plush bunny. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily, lifting her head. "Are you going home?" Christian approached, kneeling by her bed. "Not yet. I'm just going to step out so you can sleep. But I'll be nearby, okay? I'll come see you tomorrow or the next day." She rubbed her eyes. "Promise?" He placed a hand lightly on hers. "I promise, Emily. I'll come back." A soft smile curved her lips and her eyes fluttered closed. "Night," she whispered, sinking into the pillows. He stood there for a moment, heart heavy and full all at once. Then he slipped back to the living room where Caroline was finishing up the dishes. A pang of guilt rose in him. He wanted to do more, to help more, to be there. But it would take time for them all to adjust. Caroline dried her hands, noticing his somber expression. "She's out like a light, huh?" she asked, stepping around the corner to meet him. Christian nodded. "Yeah, she's exhausted." He hesitated, searching her face in the soft glow of the single-floor lamp. "I should probably head to my hotel. Let you two have your space." She folded her arms, glancing at the modest couch behind him. "You can stay a while longer if you want, but maybe it's best to keep things step by step. There's so much we still need to figure out, and I don't want to overwhelm Emily." He lowered his gaze, resisting the urge to reach for her hand. "I understand." They walked to the front door, quiet tension rolling between them. At the threshold, Christian turned to Caroline. "Thank you for letting me into your home," he said softly, "for showing me a piece of your life, our daughter's life." Her eyes shone with a flicker of emotion. "Thank you for making the effort to be here. It means a lot." For a heartbeat, it seemed they might embrace, but neither moved, so Christian simply offered a gentle, bittersweet smile. "I'll call you tomorrow, or text, whichever's easier. Let's figure out our next step." Caroline nodded, and with that, he stepped outside into the mild night, his heart caught between the life he once knew and the one he was just beginning to discover. The door closed softly behind him, and he stood on the small porch for a moment, exhaling into the darkness. Streetlights cast halos on the pavement. One or two neighbors' windows glowed. He texted a rideshare to pick him up. As he waited under a starless sky, a subtle sense of belonging sparked inside him, a flicker of hope rooted in the possibility that he could earn his place in this home and in Emily's heart, that he might eventually earn back Caroline's trust, too. He was, finally, ready to fight for it. When the car arrived, he slipped into the back seat, giving the driver a small nod. The engine purred, carrying him away from the little house with peeling paint and bright flowers, but the memory of that warm dinner and the softly lit child's bedroom remained. In his mind's eye, he held tight to the image of Emily drifting off to sleep, convinced he'd return. He repeated the promise he'd made to her under his breath, as if reminding himself of the vow, "I'll come back." When Christian woke the next morning, he felt as though his life was being split into two timelines, his old, relentless corporate existence, and the new path marked by a little girl's laughter and a woman's quiet strength. He stretched in the unfamiliar hotel bed, recalling how he'd drifted off replaying the events of the day, from Easter eggs on the hotel lawn to the simple warmth of Caroline's tiny kitchen. Even the memory of Emily's sleepy whisper calling him Daddy seemed almost dreamlike. After his shower, he turned on his phone to face the avalanche of messages and emails he'd neglected. Instantly, its screen glowed with missed calls, texts, and calendar alerts. A new wave of tension rippled through him. Sure, he'd texted a curt explanation to his CFO about a personal emergency, but with no further elaboration. Now he had investors in Europe demanding an update on a major contract, and the partner in Tokyo was worried that a competitor might swoop in if Christian wasn't present to finalize negotiations. He sank onto the edge of the bed, sifting through the urgent pleas. The old Christian would have hopped on the earliest plane out, determined to salvage the deal. But now an equally strong pull urged him to remain here to keep his vow to Emily. The prospect of leaving abruptly felt unthinkable. He might lose the delicate progress he'd made with Caroline and Emily. He forced himself to respond to a handful of emails with neutral language promising to arrange remote meetings in the coming days. For the toughest correspondences, he typed carefully, "Due to an unforeseen family matter, I will be working from this location for the near future. Please coordinate with my assistant for scheduling." He expected immediate backlash, but he'd handle it. Even if it meant risking certain deals, he refused to vanish just when Emily was beginning to trust that he would stick around. Once he'd handled enough emails to buy time, Christian dressed in casual slacks and a light sweater, again choosing comfort over corporate formality. There was a subtle liberation in not slipping on a suit. He took a deep breath, grabbed his phone and wallet, and headed downstairs. In the hotel lobby, the same older woman at the desk greeted him with a cheerful smile. "Good morning, Mr. Martins. Coffee and pastries are set out if you'd like some." He thanked her, picking up a cup of black coffee and a warm croissant. He glanced out the wide front windows. The waterfront shimmered under a brightening sky, boats drifting lazily. Immediately, he felt the urge to call Caroline, though a pang of worry struck him. Was it too early? Would she be upset if he intruded on their morning routine? Gathering his nerve, he stepped outside and dialed her number. 3 rings later, she picked up, her voice gentle. "Hello?" "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual despite the swirl in his chest. "Good morning. I hope I didn't wake you." "No, we've been up a while," Caroline replied. He could hear the faint sound of children's cartoons in the background. "Emily woke up early, excited about the day. She keeps asking if you're coming over." A soft smile curved across Christian's face. "I can, if that's okay. Maybe I can bring breakfast?" Caroline hesitated. "Actually, we already ate. Just cereal and toast. But you're welcome to stop by. I was thinking of taking Emily to the park in a bit. She's been begging for some time on the big slide. You want to come?" He exhaled, relieved. "I'd love to." "Great. Maybe around 10? That gives me time to finish tidying up." He chuckled quietly. "I'll be there." They hung up, and he felt a tiny hum of excitement in his veins. That same sensation used to come only from sealing business deals or outmaneuvering a rival. Now, the idea of pushing Emily on a swing trumped any board meeting. He walked to the front desk, speaking to the friendly manager. "I might need to extend my stay another week or so. Is that possible?" Her face brightened. "Certainly. We'll rearrange some bookings if we have to. There's a convention in town soon, but I'm sure we can manage. Let me confirm your extended reservation. When you have exact dates, let us know." He thanked her, paid for the extra nights, and then headed out, hailing a rideshare for the short drive to Caroline's. On the way, he gazed at the passing streets, the mom-and-pop shops, the quiet houses, a far cry from the bustling city centers and airport lounges he was used to, yet it felt inviting, like stepping into real life instead of living on a stage of endless deals. Soon, he found himself at Caroline's driveway. Even in broad daylight, the house's peeling paint looked more pronounced, and the yard needed attention. Some weeds poked through the patchy grass. But this time he noticed little details that made it homey. A handmade wind chime near the door, a row of marigolds blooming along the fence, and Emily's purple tricycle lying neatly on the porch. Before he could knock, the door swung open and Emily bounded out, wearing bright pink shorts and a t-shirt with a cartoon cat. "Daddy!" she cried, arms open. He crouched down, letting her throw her arms around his neck. "Good morning, sunshine," he said, warmth flooding him as he ruffled her hair. Caroline appeared behind her, a faint smile on her face. She wore jeans and a loose blouse, a small hair tie at her wrist. There was a sincerity in her eyes that made him want to never break her trust again. "Come on in," she offered, stepping aside. "We're just about ready to go to the park." Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. The living room looked tidier. Caroline must have done some rapid cleaning. The couch pillows were straightened, and Emily's crayons were stored in a plastic bin. A flicker of guilt tugged at Christian's conscience, that Caroline felt the need to present a neater space for him. They didn't linger. Within minutes, Caroline packed a small bag with water bottles and a few snacks for Emily. Then they locked up, setting off by foot, since the park was only a few blocks away. Emily led the charge, bounding ahead on the sidewalk, chattering about wanting to show Christian the biggest slide ever. The park was modest, one of those older community spaces with a rusted jungle gym, a merry-go-round that squeaked, and 2 well-used slides. Yet the trees around the perimeter offered dappled shade, and the benches, though worn, overlooked a small pond where ducks paddled lazily. A few other families were scattered around, kids squealing, parents sipping from travel mugs. Emily sprinted to the playground, climbing the steps to the tallest slide. Christian and Caroline settled on a bench nearby, watching her ascend. "You sure you don't mind me tagging along for everything?" Christian asked quietly. I don't want to impose. Caroline half smiled. You're not imposing. Emily's ecstatic. And I suppose I'm glad you're here too. I want to keep letting this happen slowly. He nodded, heart thudding at that subtle acceptance. They watched Emily whoosh down the slide, her hair flying in the breeze, laughter bursting free. At the bottom she pumped her fists, then she saw them looking and yelled, Did you see? Caroline clapped. Yes, you're so fast! Christian gave a thumbs up. He felt an odd swell of pride, far more potent than any business deal could muster. They spent the next hour rotating between the swing set, monkey bars, and the seesaw. Emily insisted Christian sit on the opposite side so she could bounce. He nearly toppled off once, provoking giggles from both Emily and Caroline. It felt like a snapshot from someone else's life, a father, mother, and daughter enjoying a breezy spring morning in a humble park. Eventually, Emily asked for a snack, so they found a shaded picnic table. Caroline pulled out apples, carrot sticks, and crackers. Christian helped Emily wash her hands at a small drinking fountain. Everything about the moment felt refreshingly ordinary and profoundly special. While Emily munched, Christian and Caroline sat side by side on the bench, conversation drifting to practical matters. Caroline admitted that her job sewing for a local alterations shop wasn't stable. Sometimes she picked up extra piecework at home, patching or hemming clothes. It barely covered rent. I keep thinking about going back to school, finishing a degree, or at least picking up a few certifications, Caroline said softly. But time and money have always been issues. Emily's school schedule, my job. I just keep pushing it off. Christian listened intently. He felt a surge of empathy and frustration at how quickly he'd soared to success while she struggled day by day. What if you had some financial backing? He asked gently. I'm not trying to offend you, but if you want to study or find something better, maybe I can help. It doesn't have to be indefinite or a handout, just enough for stability while you figure it out. Caroline's cheeks colored. I don't want to be seen as a charity case, Christian. He shook his head. You're not. You're the mother of my child. This is about giving both of you a better life and letting you have the chance to pursue something you love. She fiddled with a napkin, eyes lowered. I'll think about it. It's a big step. Okay, he murmured. No pressure, just promise me you will think about it. She nodded, and they fell quiet, turning their attention to Emily, who was dipping her carrot sticks in applesauce and pronouncing it yummy. After the snack break, Emily raced back to the playground. Caroline touched Christian's arm lightly. Thank you, she said, for offering, and for not making me feel forced. He covered her hand with his own, just for a moment. I care about you both. It's the least I can do. She offered him a tender, hesitant smile, one that spoke of gratitude but also the fragility of her trust. Emily's laughter drew their gazes back to the monkey bars. As they watched her dangle, Christian reflected on how far he'd come from the man who never missed a flight. Here he was, missing critical negotiations, but he felt more fulfilled than he had in years. They spent another hour at the park, strolling around the duck pond and letting Emily skip stones. Eventually, the midday sun grew hot, and they decided to head back. On the walk, Emily prattled about wanting to draw a picture of the ducks, her small hand clasping Christian's. Caroline walked on the other side, the three forming a line that felt surprisingly natural. When they reached Caroline's house, Emily decided to continue coloring at the small table in the living room. Caroline invited Christian to stay for a cold drink. He accepted, settling on the couch while she went to the kitchen. He glanced around at the small changes, fresh daisies on the windowsill, Emily's newest drawings taped to the fridge. It was a glimpse into their daily rhythms. Caroline returned with glasses of iced tea, passing one to him. She settled into a chair, resting the drink on her knee. So do you have any urgent calls you need to make for work? She asked. He sighed. Probably. My CFO and a few board members are furious, but but I told them I'm dealing with a family situation. They can handle the day-to-day for a while. That's what a team is for, right? Her expression softened. I appreciate that you're prioritizing Emily and everything we're figuring out. But I also don't want to sabotage your career. Don't worry, he assured gently. I built that company with enough structure to keep it running without me for a bit. My life's changing now. I want to make it revolve around you too, not just the company. Carolyn sipped her tea, gaze drifting to Emily, who sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered in front of her. I guess we're all figuring out a new normal, Caroline said. Christian nodded, feeling the gravity of those words. He'd always believed his identity was anchored in spreadsheets, profit margins, and the admiration of industry peers. Now, a small girl's doodles and a woman's quiet resilience were reshaping his sense of self. He set down his glass. Caroline, can I ask something? I know I said I'd go step by step, but would you consider letting me take Emily out tomorrow just for a few hours? Maybe to a museum or a children's play area. I want some time with her to talk, bond, and show her new things. Caroline pursed her lips, thinking. She'd love that, I'm sure. As long as you bring her home before dinner. She has a bedtime routine and I don't want to disrupt it too much. He nodded, a small smile forming. Deal. Across the room, Emily turned, overhearing enough to ask, Where are we going tomorrow, Daddy? He grinned. It's a surprise, he teased gently, earning a delighted squeal. As she went back to coloring, Caroline and Christian exchanged a look, tentative, hopeful. It felt like progress, the slow weaving of a new life, one day at a time. He silently promised himself that each day he'd prove to Caroline and to Emily that he was here for the long haul. They spent the afternoon chatting lightly. Emily showed Christian a short cartoon she liked, and he endured the silly jokes with genuine amusement. Caroline offered a simple lunch of sandwiches. It was unremarkable, wholly ordinary. Yet for Christian, it carried the sweetness of belonging he'd once thought unattainable. Eventually, late afternoon arrived. Christian rose from the couch, mindful not to overstay. He told Emily he'd be back bright and early tomorrow for their adventure. She wrapped him in another hug, her eyes shining with excitement. Caroline walked him to the door, thanking him for the park outing and everything else. As he stepped onto the porch, Christian felt the oddest sensation, like he was leaving home, even though this wasn't his house. He paused, turning to Caroline. I'll text you tonight if that's okay? She nodded, expression gentle. That's okay. With that, he descended the steps, shooting a glance back at the small house. Emily waved from the window, pressing her face to the glass. He waved back before walking down the sidewalk, phone in hand to summon a ride. A swirl of thoughts clashed in his mind about custody, shared parenting, the prospect of Caroline's own dreams. It would all take time. But as he stood there under a golden sky, he knew one truth. He wanted to be part of this, wholeheartedly. The rideshare pulled up, and he slid into the back seat, heart buoyed by the memory of Emily's grin and Caroline's appreciative eyes. Tomorrow, he thought, forging a mental note. Tomorrow, I'll keep showing them I mean it. He gave the driver directions back to the hotel, sinking into the seat. Despite the million tasks awaiting him at work, he felt an indescribable lightness. Because at long last, he wasn't running from anything. He was running toward the people who truly mattered. Christian stepped off the hotel elevator the following morning, phone in hand, checking the time. 8:56 a.m. The plan was to pick up Emily for their little outing around 9:30. He'd woken early to finalize a few urgent work emails, this time clarifying to his executive team that he'd be unavailable for in-person meetings for at least another week. Although the pushback was fierce, multiple messages about lost opportunities and the ominous threat of a major competitor swooping in, Christian resisted the impulse to rush back to the corporate battlefield. If it came down to a choice, he was going to stand by his daughter's side, even if it meant letting some deals slip. The old him might have balked at that notion, but the new him felt more certain than ever. the hotel lobby greeted him with its usual gentle hum. He crossed to the desk to drop off some laundry, glancing around at the subdued decor he was slowly growing accustomed to. The older woman at the front, the same friendly clerk who had helped him extend his stay, noted his determined expression. "Off to spend the day with your family again?" she asked with a smile. Christian nodded, a soft warmth in his eyes. "Yes, I'm taking my daughter out. I owe her some special time." "It's heartwarming to see," she said kindly. "You have a wonderful day, sir." He thanked her and stepped out into the mild morning air. Instead of hailing a rideshare this time, he decided to walk to Caroline's neighborhood. It wasn't far, maybe 20 minutes, and the path took him through a charming stretch of local shops and houses. He wanted to immerse himself in this community where Caroline and Emily lived, to see what their mornings might look like. As he strolled the sidewalks, he passed a bakery exuding scents of fresh bread and cinnamon buns. A mother and son, both carrying backpacks, rushed by, likely off to school. He paused at a flower stand on the corner, eyeing a small bouquet of daisies. After a moment of deliberation, he purchased it, trying not to second-guess himself too much. They weren't romantic roses, just cheerful, innocent daisies that might brighten Caroline's day. The final block led him to the familiar peeling paint house. His pulse quickened as he noted the chipped fence and the cluster of wild marigolds. Before he could knock, he heard Emily's voice from inside the open window. "Mommy, do you think Daddy's coming soon?" He couldn't help but smile as he rapped on the doorframe. Caroline appeared wearing a casual skirt and a light sweater. She looked surprised and touched when she saw the flowers. "These are for you," Christian said quietly, extending the daisies. "Just a little hello?" She blinked, color blooming in her cheeks. "Oh, thank you." Taking them gently, she stepped aside to let him in. "You didn't have to." He shrugged. "I wanted to." His gaze flicked to Emily, who popped around Caroline's legs like an excited puppy. "Daddy!" She ran up for a quick hug. "I'm all ready. See?" She gestured to her shorts, sneakers, and a small backpack. "I have crayons in here, and my water bottle and a snack," he laughed. "You are definitely ready." Then he looked to Caroline for confirmation. "We'll be out for a few hours, if that's okay. I thought maybe we'd go to the kids' science museum. There's an exhibit on space and animals right now. She can touch interactive stuff, do crafts, then maybe lunch." Caroline smiled. "She'll love it. And yes, that's fine. Just text me if anything changes." "Will do," he promised. He turned to Emily, offering his hand. "Shall we?" Emily practically bounced. "Yeah!" Caroline hovered in the doorway, daisies in hand, watching as Christian and Emily ambled off down the sidewalk. For a moment, Christian glanced back, meeting Caroline's gaze. She lifted the flowers slightly in a gesture of thanks, and he nodded. It was a quiet, tender moment, a step forward in trust. Once they turned the corner, Emily chattered away about everything she saw: a stray cat prowling near a garbage bin, a caterpillar creeping along a leaf. Christian felt a swirl of affection. How had he lived without these small daily marvels? They caught a bus toward the city center, as Christian still hadn't rented a car. Emily perched beside him on the seat, face pressed to the window. She was fascinated by the passing buildings, exclaiming every now and then, "Look at that!" at a mural or a bustling cafe. At last, they arrived at the Children's Science Museum, a bright structure with colorful banners advertising exhibits about dinosaurs, planets, and ecosystems. Emily nearly hopped out of her sneakers with excitement. Holding her hand firmly, Christian guided her inside. The cheerful hum of families and excited children resonated in the lobby, and he paid for their tickets without hesitation. The first exhibit featured a miniature rainforest environment, live butterflies in an enclosed habitat, small birds flitting among the foliage. Emily gasped when a butterfly landed briefly on her shoulder. Christian managed to snap a quick photo with his phone, capturing her awed expression. His heart pinched at the thought of how many firsts he'd missed, but at least he was here now. Moving on, they visited a hands-on space exhibit where kids tested small rockets, launching them with pumps. Emily insisted they try every interactive station. At one point, Christian carefully helped her position a foam rocket on the launcher, then pumped air until it shot upward with a whoosh, eliciting her squeal of joy. "Daddy, that was so cool!" she cried, turning to hug him around the waist. He felt his chest tighten with emotion. Just hearing "Daddy" so confidently from her lips was enough to make his throat constrict. They explored further, a giant dinosaur fossil replica, a pretend TV weather studio, and a section devoted to local wildlife. Emily gently petted a display about sea creatures, marveling at how starfish felt. Christian read the information plaques to her, simplifying the jargon. She lapped it up, asking 100 curious questions. Eventually, they took a break in the museum cafe, sharing a couple of sandwiches and fruit cups. Emily prattled on about wanting to become an explorer or a vet for animals when she grew up. Christian listened, enthralled by her boundless imagination. He offered to buy her a small toy from the gift shop if she'd like a souvenir, and she chose a plush turtle that she named Shelley. After lunch, they explored more, pausing at an arts and crafts station to make a paper plate planet model. Christian noticed the gentle banter between other parents and their kids, reflecting on how seamlessly he and Emily fit in here. It felt natural, even though it was all still so new. By mid-afternoon, the museum intercom announced that closing time was near. Emily's feet were dragging. She was exhausted, but happy. Christian led her outside, stepping into the late-day sunshine. A contented hush fell over them as they ambled toward the bus stop. "That was the best day," Emily declared, hugging her new turtle. "Thank you, Daddy." Christian crouched to her height, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "I'm so glad you had fun, sweetheart. We can do more things like this, okay? Whenever we can." She nodded vigorously, then yawned. "Mommy's gonna be so happy to see Shelley." "She likes turtles too, I think." He chuckled, guiding her onto the bus. During the ride back, Emily dozed against his arm, her backpack at her feet. Christian gazed down at her peaceful face, a surge of love and protectiveness pulsing through him. This was a girl who, until a week ago, he hadn't known existed, and now he couldn't fathom life without her. They arrived in Caroline's neighborhood just before 5. Emily woke up groggily, rubbing her eyes as they walked the last block home. Caroline must have been watching for them because she opened the door at their approach. Emily scampered in, chattering excitedly about starfish, rockets, and Shelley the turtle. Caroline laughed and welcomed her into the living room, letting her flop onto the couch. Christian set down Emily's backpack and lingered in the entryway, meeting Caroline's amused glance. "She had a blast," he said softly. "She might crash in, 20 minutes. Caroline smiled gently. "I'm glad. Thank you for taking her." Then she lowered her voice, her gaze flicking toward Emily's bedroom. "I hope it wasn't too overwhelming for you." He shook his head. "It was amazing, actually." He paused, then added, "I got a few photos. I could send them to you if you want." She nodded, her eyes warming. "Yes, please." Christian followed her into the kitchen where she gestured for him to sit at the small table. Emily was in the living room, settling in with her plush turtle, flipping on cartoons. A wave of familiarity washed over Christian, the same dynamic as the previous evenings, a sense of domestic quiet that felt precious. Carolyn got out a carton of juice for Emily, pouring a glass. Then she joined Christian, leaning on the table. "So how was it really? Did she talk about anything personal?" He smiled, recalling Emily's grand ideas about the future. "She mostly talked about animals and space. She said you like turtles, so she picked that plush. She didn't mention anything complicated. Just enjoyed the day." Caroline's expression lightened. "Good. I was nervous she'd ask you tough questions." Like why you weren't there before." His gaze dropped for a second. "I'd answer honestly if she did, but she's so full of curiosity about the present. Maybe she's not dwelling on the past as much as we do." Caroline nodded, a small tension leaving her posture. "I guess she's just happy you're here now?" They locked eyes, each understanding the unspoken weight. It wouldn't be as simple for the two of them, but at least Emily's heart was open. A silence settled, not entirely uncomfortable. Finally, Caroline cleared her throat, changing the subject. "Listen, I was thinking we could do a small dinner. I have leftover pasta and salad fixings, unless you have other plans." He shook his head immediately. "No, I'd love that." She mustered a faint smile. "All right, then you can stay while I cook if you want. Maybe keep Emily company?" "Absolutely," he said. And so he did, sitting in the living room with Emily, hearing her recount every detail of the museum again, answering her questions about what they'd do tomorrow or the next day. A sense of belonging wove itself through him with each passing minute. Caroline soon emerged with steaming bowls of pasta, topped with a simple tomato sauce and a side of salad. They tucked in at the small dining table, Emily insisting on describing Shelley's favorite food as lettuce, which made them all laugh. For once, Christian barely thought about his phone or the deals he was missing. He felt fully present in the moment. After dinner, the routine played out similarly to nights before. Emily had some playtime, then a quick bath, and bedtime approached. Christian read her a short story, a book about animals exploring a forest, and she yawned through the final pages. Her eyelids fluttered closed. He gently set the book aside, tucking the blanket around her. "Sleep well, Emily," he whispered. She murmured something incoherent, nuzzling Shelley. His heart gave a squeeze at how tiny and peaceful she looked. In the hallway, Caroline leaned against the wall, arms folded. Her eyes flicked to the closed bedroom door. "She's never been this comfortable with anyone else before. It's like you've always been here." He felt his throat tighten. "I'm glad. But I wish—" He trailed off, not needing to say how he wished he'd been there from the start. Caroline gave a slow nod. "I know." They moved into the living room again. Caroline sat on the edge of the couch and Christian settled beside her, leaving a small gap of space. The overhead light was dim, the hush of night settling in. "How long do you plan to stay in town?" Caroline asked, a hint of worry in her voice. "As long as it takes," Christian answered firmly. "I told my team I'm not traveling right now." She let out a quiet breath of relief, though uncertainty swirled in her eyes. "And after that? When you have to go back to the city or fly somewhere?" He thought about it. "I'll work something out. Come visit on weekends or fly you two out if you're willing, or maybe move part-time here. I don't have all the answers yet, but I refuse to disappear." Caroline nodded, staring at her hands. "That means a lot. Emily will be crushed if you leave for too long, but I don't want to stand in your way either. You've built this huge career. I don't want to sabotage that." He reached out, gently resting his hand over hers. "You're not sabotaging anything. My life is changing, and that's okay. I want it to." Her eyes rose to meet his, full of unspoken emotion. A wave of closeness pulsed between them, memories of a time when they were young and fearless, and a new tenderness shaped by the child they shared. For a moment she seemed on the verge of leaning closer, then caught herself and stood abruptly. I should wash these dishes," she murmured. "Thanks for helping with bedtime." He let his hand fall, exhaling softly. "Of course." He stood too, clearing his throat. "I guess I'll let you have the evening. I can see myself out." Caroline walked him to the door. Before he left, he paused. "You know," he said quietly, "I'm here if you ever want to talk about anything." Her gaze flicked to him, gratitude and apprehension mingling. "I know. Thank you, Christian." With that, he stepped out into the warm night, heart pounding. This day had been a dream-like success. Adventure with Emily, a quiet, almost domestic dinner, and no sign of meltdown. but he sensed the complexity beneath Caroline's composed exterior. She needed assurance, proof of consistency over time. As he walked down the driveway, daisies still adorned the windowsill inside. He thought of them as a symbol of small beginnings. This wasn't the grand, perfect scenario he might have once envisioned. He was stepping into a life already in progress, with regrets and tensions layered in. Yet the potential for something real, for a loving family, felt closer than ever. He jammed his hands into his pockets, heading back toward the main street. Each footstep echoed with promise. One day at a time, he reminded himself, I'll show them I'm not going anywhere. His phone buzzed. A notification from work glowed on the screen, an angry all-caps text from a partner about deadlines. He swiped it away, resolute. There would be consequences for his prolonged absence, but none he couldn't handle. The bigger consequence of abandoning Caroline and Emily now? That was unthinkable. A rideshare glided to a stop at the curb. Christian climbed in, glancing back at the modest house once more. In the window, a light flicked off, signifying Caroline's bedtime routine or her attempt to preserve electricity. He pictured Emily already asleep, hugging Shelley, dreaming of rocket launches and the next day's small delights. He smiled to himself. Yes, there were 1,000 details to sort out, but for the first time in his life, Christian didn't mind the uncertainty, because home was no longer a penthouse or a plush boardroom. It was wherever he could see his daughter laugh and watch Caroline smile, and he intended to earn that place, no matter what it took. A chill morning wind whispered through the neighborhood trees. Christian zipped up his light jacket as he approached Caroline's house. The peeling paint and sagging porch swing had become oddly comforting sights, a reminder of the life he was learning to embrace rather than the one he'd left behind. It was late in the week now, and he'd already spent several days building a new normal with Caroline and Emily. He checked the time on his phone, 8:45 a.m. Caroline had mentioned that Emily's class had a half day today, which meant he'd be free to pick her up at noon and spend the afternoon together. In a text, Caroline had confessed a swirl of anxieties about Emily's new routine with him. Would it disrupt her concentration at school? Was Christian's presence changing her behavior? Still, she'd given him the green light to manage school pickup and had even offered to let him walk Emily home. As Christian ascended the small porch steps, the front door eased open. Caroline stood there, her expression a blend of relief and concern. "Morning," she said softly, stepping back so he could enter. She wore jeans and a simple long-sleeved shirt, and there was a faint tiredness around her eyes. He gave her a reassuring smile. "Morning. Everything okay?" Caroline offered a half shrug. "Just the usual preschool day rush." Emily spilled juice on her shirt, then insisted that she needed a different pair of socks because the first ones felt weird. She let out a weary laugh. "But we managed. She's almost ready." He couldn't help but grin. That's normal kid stuff. It's kind of sweet in a chaotic way. She motioned for him to follow her into the living room. Emily stood near the couch, wrestling with a hoodie zipper. "I can't get it," she whined, eyebrows knitting in frustration. Christian crouched. "Let me help." He guided the zipper smoothly into place, and she huffed in relief. "Thanks, Daddy." That single word lit up his heart every time. "No problem, sweetheart. So, big half-day at school, huh? Are you excited?" She nodded vigorously. "We get to watch a puppet show at school. Then after, can we get ice cream?" He laughed. "We'll see. Maybe a treat, yes. We'll wait for your mom's okay." Emily bobbed her head, clearly satisfied. She hefted her backpack onto her shoulders, though it nearly toppled her backward. Caroline stepped in to adjust the straps. "You look good to go," Christian declared, gently nudging Emily toward the door. "Let's not be late." Caroline took a breath, glancing between them. "I'll drive you both there. Then, Christian, you said you can pick her up around noon, right?" He confirmed. "Yes, I'll be waiting at the gates." Emily, already bounding onto the porch, called back, "Hurry or I'll be late!" They piled into Caroline's older sedan, with Emily strapped into her booster seat. The drive to the elementary school was only 10 minutes, enough time for Emily to chatter about the puppet show and how her friend Mia was super excited too. Caroline navigated the familiar streets, tension noticeable in her shoulders. At the school, parents and children bustled around the drop-off zone. Caroline pulled to a stop, turning to Emily. "Okay, be good. Listen to your teacher." Emily flashed a big grin. "I will. Bye, Mommy. Bye, Daddy." She hopped out, waving as she trotted toward the entrance with a cluster of kids. Christian exhaled, watching her slip inside. Every time he saw her blend into that swirl of normal childhood routine, he felt a pang that he'd missed so many prior drop-offs. But at least he was here now. Caroline's hands still gripped the steering wheel. She stared out the windshield as if lost in thought. Christian reached across the console, placing a hand lightly on her arm. "Penny for your thoughts?" She swallowed. "It's just... she's letting you into her world so easily. I can't tell if it's good or if it's too fast. She's never had a father figure. What if something changes and it hurts her?" His chest tightened with sympathy. "I understand your worry. But I'm not going anywhere, Caroline. I know we can't fix the past, but I want to be there for her consistently." Caroline's lips curved in a sad smile. "I can see that, but it's still new. I guess we'll navigate it day by day." He nodded, letting a quiet moment pass. "Look, if you want to have a more formal arrangement, visitation schedules or something, I'm open to discussing it. I don't want to step on your toes, but I do want us to be clear, for Emily's sake." She sighed, pulling away from the curb. "Yeah, maybe we should talk to a lawyer or mediator eventually, but let's not rush into paperwork. Let's see how we settle into this first." "Okay," Christian agreed gently, step by step. They drove back to her house in near silence, each lost in thought. In her driveway, she hesitated, turning off the engine. "Do you have time to come in for coffee?" she asked. "I know you have your own place at the hotel, but I thought maybe we could chat a bit." A soft warmth blossomed in his chest. "I'd love to." Inside, he helped her gather coffee mugs in the modest kitchen. She filled the kettle, turning on the stove for drip coffee. The house was quiet without Emily's chatter, and Christian noticed how neatly Caroline had arranged everything, like she was trying to present a calm order to a life that had been chaotic for too long. Once the coffee was ready, they sat at the small dining table. Caroline folded her hands around her mug, inhaling the aroma. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, voice low. "The one about helping me financially if I want to study or find a better job. It's hard for me to accept, but I can't deny that I'm stuck in a rut." He nodded, giving her space to speak without interruption. She continued, "My shifts at the alteration shop are unpredictable. The pay isn't great. I do side sewing projects, but that barely covers rent and utilities. Emily needs new clothes constantly. She's growing so fast, and I'd like to save for her future education. But it feels impossible." Christian met her eyes, sincerity emanating from his voice. "Let me help. It doesn't have to be a permanent arrangement. But if I can shoulder some of the immediate stress, you could focus on upskilling or taking a course. I want you both to feel secure." She took a sip of coffee, exhaling slowly. "I guess I'm finally realizing that pride won't pay bills, and Emily's well-being is more important than me feeling independent. It just goes against how I was raised, to always manage on my own." He reached across the table, gently resting his hand over hers. "I admire your independence. But now you're not alone anymore. We can figure out a system that works for both of us." Caroline's hand trembled slightly under his. "Okay," she whispered. Maybe I can take a bookkeeping course, or something I can do remotely so I'm not always away from Emily. I'll look into it." A smile touched Christian's lips. "That sounds like a great start. I'll stand behind you the whole way." She squeezed his hand before pulling away. "Thank you." Her voice wavered with relief and a flicker of renewed hope. They lingered at the table, sipping coffee and discussing mundane details, budgeting for groceries, Emily's favorite after-school snacks, the possibility of Christian helping with rent for a while. The conversation was practical, yet infused with a sense of possibility. It felt like the scaffolding of a new life. Just before 11:30, Christian excused himself to head back toward the school. Caroline walked him to the door. As he stepped outside, an awkward tension settled, an unspoken closeness. Their gazes locked, and for a heartbeat, it seemed like they might lean into each other. But the moment passed with a shy, mutual step back. "I'll text you if there's any delay," Christian said softly. Caroline nodded. "And if Emily wants to stay out longer after school, just let me know. I'll be home finishing a sewing project." He smiled. "Will do. Thanks again for the coffee." Their goodbyes exchanged, Christian made his way on foot to the school. The crisp air cleared his head, though the swirl of feelings refused to settle. He recognized the complicated undercurrent, the desire to move closer to Caroline, to recapture some lost affection, balanced against the fragility of trust. He couldn't rush her, nor himself. Emily was the priority. At the school gates, parents congregated, awaiting the half-day release. Christian spotted Mia's mother, whom Emily had mentioned. She gave him a polite nod but didn't strike up conversation, likely unsure who he was. The bell rang, and a cluster of children poured out, squealing with excitement over their early dismissal. Emily and Mia appeared at the door, holding hands as they hopped down the steps. "Daddy!" Emily shouted, bounding over. "Hi!" Mia peered at him curiously but smiled a second later. Christian offered a friendly grin to both girls. "Hey, Emily!" "Hey, Mia!" Mia's mother waved from a short distance. The girls said their quick goodbyes, Mia skipping off to her own mom. Emily clutched Christian's hand, radiating happiness. "The puppet show was so funny, Daddy. There was a cow that kept telling jokes. Then we drew pictures of our favorite parts." Christian hoisted her backpack onto his shoulder, listening intently. "That sounds awesome. Did you save your drawing?" Emily giggled. "Yup, it's in my folder. I'll show you later." They started the walk back, Emily chattering about each silly puppet scene. The midday sun glowed on the sidewalks, where neighbors swept leaves from stoops or waved to passing cars. The normalcy of it all, the routine of collecting her from school, once again gripped Christian with a sense of how extraordinary these small moments were. As they neared her street, Emily asked, "Daddy, do you have to go to your other home soon? The big one with your work?" He paused, heart twisting. "I might have to visit eventually, but not right away. I'd rather stay here for now with you and Mommy." She beamed. "Good. I like when you're here every day." He squeezed her hand lightly. "I like it too." When they reached the house, Emily bounded up the steps, calling out, "Mommy, we're home!" The door opened, and Caroline appeared, a pincushion on her wrist, thread dangling from her pocket. She offered Christian a quick, relieved smile. Emily ran inside to fetch the drawing she wanted to show him, leaving the adults in the entry. "All good?" Caroline asked. He nodded. "Perfect. We had a great walk. She's glowing." She sighed with contentment. "Thank you, Christian." "Any time," he murmured. "I'll hang around for a bit if that's okay. Then maybe take off so you can work." She nodded, stepping aside to let him pass. He moved into the living room, inhaling the comforting scent of coffee and faint laundry soap. Emily soon joined him, brandishing her folded-up puppet show picture. "Ta-da!" She spread it on the small coffee table, a crayon collage of silly farm animals, including a bright purple cow. "It's fantastic!" Christian praised, kneeling to examine it. "We should put it on the fridge." Emily nodded vigorously. "Yes, please." He led her into the kitchen, rummaging for a magnet to hang the new creation. Caroline followed, smiling softly. "It's nice seeing you two do such normal stuff," she commented. "Really nice." They secured the drawing, and Emily clapped as if awarding them all a prize. Christian felt a blossoming warmth at how ordinary and precious this was. For all the high-stakes deals he'd once prioritized, none of them gave him the fulfillment he found in a child's simple joy. Eventually, after some chatter about what Emily learned that day, long enough for her to settle into the living room with crayons, Christian exchanged a quiet glance with Caroline, indicating it was time for him to go. He walked to the door with Caroline following. At the threshold, they paused, an unspoken understanding thick in the air. "Thank you again," she said softly, "for picking her up, for being here." He tucked his hands in his pockets. "Thank you for letting me." Then he mustered a tender, hopeful look. "If you need anything, groceries, bills, anything, please tell me. I meant what I said about helping." She swallowed, nodding. "I will. And about your job, I really appreciate you putting us first." He shrugged, yet his eyes shone with sincerity. "You are my family. The rest will sort itself out." For a fleeting second he felt an urge to lean in, to press a gentle kiss to her cheek, some tangible sign of closeness. But he held back, aware that trust was fragile. So he simply said, "I'll see you tomorrow, or whenever you want me to come by." She gave a small, grateful smile. "Tomorrow works." He slipped outside into the midday sun, letting the door close quietly behind him. As he walked away, the hush of the neighborhood enveloped him, along with the realization that day by day, hour by hour, he was carving a place in Emily's life and perhaps rebuilding a bridge to Caroline's heart. With each step, he felt more certain that no business meeting, no corporate empire could match the importance of the people waiting behind that chipped door. And for the first time, that knowledge filled him not with dread, but with a calm, luminous sense of belonging. The sunlight streamed through lace curtains in Caroline's living room, illuminating motes of dust swirling through the air like tiny golden fireflies. It was another quiet morning. A few weeks after Christian's unexpected arrival had turned all their lives upside down in the best possible way. The house was still modest, its paint still peeling, but something warm thrived within its walls now, a sense of possibility. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting crayons into neat piles. She'd declared it Crayon Organization Day, a self-imposed quest to find which colors she was running low on. The new drawings on the fridge charted her adventures with Christian, museum visits, duck feeding at the pond, even a day trip to a small local fair. In the kitchen, Caroline poured coffee into 2 mugs, her mind drifting to the email she'd just received confirming her enrollment in an online bookkeeping course. A surge of excitement and nerves fluttered in her stomach. The notion of Christian covering the initial fees still made her uneasy, yet she couldn't deny the relief that blossomed at the thought of building a more stable future for herself and Emily. She carried the mugs into the living room, where Christian was leaning over the couch, phone in hand. He had a half-smile on his face, typing messages to someone from his office. But the tension lines that once creased his brow whenever he looked at his phone seemed softer now, like a man who had found new perspective. Caroline handed him a mug. "Black coffee, right?" He accepted it, pausing his texts. "Yes, thank you." He breathed in the steam. "I appreciate the hospitality, as always." She settled on the couch, nursing her own coffee. Emily's chatter about crayons filtered in from the rug. "So," Caroline said softly, "are you still set on returning to the city for a few days this weekend? I know you need to check on your office in person." Christian nodded, eyes flicking to Emily. He lowered his voice. "I do, but I promise it's only short term. I'll be back within a week, maybe less. Everything's changed at work. I'm reorganizing roles so I can handle more remotely." Her expression showed tentative acceptance. "Emily's going to miss you." A gentle smile tugged at his mouth. "I'll miss her too, but I'll call every day, video chat if possible. I'm determined to keep that connection strong." Caroline searched his face, still grappling with the magnitude of this shift. "You're serious about balancing your life, aren't you?" "Absolutely," he replied, taking a sip of coffee. "I can't go back to how things were, flying everywhere, ignoring the personal side of my life. That old routine feels hollow now." Caroline mulled this over, heartened by the sincerity in his tone. She knew it wasn't easy to rewire a life built on relentless ambition, but day after day, Christian had shown up, bringing groceries when she struggled, taking Emily to the park, listening intently to every rambling story Emily invented. It was the kind of fatherly presence she'd once thought impossible. Emily, tired of sorting crayons, hopped to her feet and raced over. "Daddy, guess what color I have the most of?" Christian set down his coffee, feigning deep thought. Pink?" She giggled. "Nope, it's purple. I have 12 purples." He smacked his forehead. "Of course, purple is the best color. Just ask your puppet show cow." Her laughter chimed through the room. She climbed onto the couch, squeezing herself between them, as if she'd been doing that her entire life. Caroline and Christian exchanged a smile over her head. "Daddy," Emily asked, gaze inquisitive, "why do you have to go away sometimes? Do you not like it here?" His chest constricted. Carefully, he turned to face her. "I love it here, sweetheart, but my work is in another city, and I have to go make sure everything's running okay. Once I'm done, I'll come right back." She nodded sagely, though a hint of concern lingered in her eyes. "Can I call you?" "Anytime," he said softly. "We can video chat too. I'll show you my office if you want." Emily brightened. "That's cool." Then she yawned, pushing closer to Caroline's side. Weekend mornings sometimes left her drowsy, especially after a busy week of school. Caroline stroked Emily's hair, a protective gesture. "Don't worry, Emily. Daddy will be back before you know it." Christian's phone pinged with a message. He glanced at the screen, shaking his head with an amused sigh. "They're pressing me about arrival times. I have a meeting at midday tomorrow." Caroline offered him a small grin. "That's your world calling." He took her hand, just for a moment, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I have a new world now, one I care about far more." She felt a rush of warmth at the admission, echoing the sentiment that had grown steadily between them. They'd been cautious, each uncertain of crossing lines that might complicate Emily's life. But the closeness was undeniable, an undercurrent pulling them together. Emily dozed off, lulled by the quiet. Caroline carefully shifted out from under her, letting the child rest on the couch. "She was up late drawing," she murmured, tucking a blanket around Emily's shoulders. "She's so tired now." Christian watched the small, sleeping form. "Could we talk outside for a moment?" Caroline nodded, and they moved onto the front porch, softly shutting the door behind them. The autumn wind brushed by, carrying a hint of leaves turning color. They stood by the railing, side by side, arms occasionally bumping. "I've been thinking," Christian began, voice pensive, "when I come back from the city, maybe I should find a more permanent place here, an apartment or a small house to rent, something stable so I'm not stuck in a hotel." Her gaze turned thoughtful. "You really want to make this town your base?" He tucked his hands into his jacket pockets. "Yes. Even if I still have obligations in the city, I want to spend most of my time here, near you and Emily. She's in school. You have your life here. I can't uproot you both to follow me around the globe." Caroline's heart twinged with a mixture of relief and nerves. "That's a big step, Christian." "I know." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "But we're a family now, in whatever form. I want to be present. And who knows, maybe eventually we could—" She caught her breath, reading the unspoken question in his eyes. "Let's give it time," she whispered. The warmth flooded her. "I want that too, but I need to be sure we're not rushing. Emily's happiness comes first, and we have to build trust day by day." His shoulders relaxed. "I'm okay with that. Whatever pace you need." They lapsed into a comfortable hush, scanning the quiet street. A neighbor across the way was watering her flowers, waving a friendly greeting. Caroline waved back, then leaned on the porch railing. "I'm starting that bookkeeping course next week," she confided. "I'm excited but also worried I'll fail or it won't lead to something better." He turned, resting one hand gently on her shoulder. "You won't fail. You're capable of so much. And I'll be right here, or a phone call away if I'm out of town, to support you. Think of it as an investment in both your futures." She swallowed, lips curving into a grateful smile. "Thank you. For everything." A quiet wind rustled the marigolds in the yard. In the distance, a car honked. It struck Caroline how, not too long ago, her life had been overshadowed by survival-mode single parenting. Now, with Christian's unwavering support, a door had opened to new paths, for herself, for Emily, and possibly for all three of them together. When they went back inside, Emily stirred on the couch, blinking awake. She yawned, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy?" she mumbled. "I'm right here," Christian said, crossing to her side. He crouched down, brushing her hair off her forehead. "I was just outside with Mommy." Her half-lidded eyes flicked to Caroline, then back to him. "Are you leaving soon?" "Not just yet," he said gently. "I'll stay a bit longer today. Then tomorrow I catch my flight. But it's only for a few days, I promise." She nodded, still groggy. "Then you'll come back?" He bent forward, pressing a light kiss to her hair, something he'd only recently grown comfortable doing. "Absolutely," he vowed. "I'll always come back." Emily's small arms looped around his neck, and she rested her head against his shoulder. Caroline watched them, her heart swelling at the tenderness in the scene. Tears pricked her eyes, not of sadness this time, but of profound gratitude. It seemed they'd reached a place none of them could have imagined a short while ago. Time passed in small, precious moments. Emily waking fully and showing Christian her latest drawing of a magic bunny, Carolyn and Christian cooking a quick lunch together, the three of them sharing easy laughter about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. The everyday routines that once felt mundane to Caroline now shone with a fragile, wonderful glow. Mid-afternoon came, and Christian finally rose from the couch, carefully folding the throw blanket he'd draped over Emily earlier. "I better head to the hotel," he said quietly. "Pack my things. Get ready for tomorrow's flight." Emily's face fell, but she mustered a brave nod. "Okay. But you'll call me when you land, right?" "Absolutely," Christian assured. "I'll call and send pictures. You can send me pictures too, so I know what you and Mommy are up to." She grinned, satisfied. Caroline walked with him to the door, the same farewell routine that had come to define his evenings. Except this time he might not return tomorrow, but in several days. They both felt the weight of that. On the threshold, he looked at Caroline. "I'll send you my flight details," he murmured. "Then once I'm back, let's start looking for a place I can rent nearby." Caroline nodded, smoothing a stray curl behind her ear. "Call me once you land too. We'll be waiting." Emily hovered at Caroline's side, stuffed bunny clutched in her arms. Christian crouched for a final hug. "See you soon, sunshine." He straightened, exchanging a final glance with Caroline, a silent promise passing between them. Then he stepped out into the crisp afternoon, each step away from the house, heavy yet hopeful. The path to forging a steady, enduring family bond would not be easy. Challenges loomed, negotiations with the board, rent for a new place, Caroline's new career path, Emily's emotional needs. But these trials felt surmountable now that love and commitment fueled their resolve. As Christian disappeared down the sidewalk, Emily clung to Caroline's hand. "He's really coming back," she said with childlike certainty. Caroline smiled, hugging her daughter close. "Yes, baby, he really is." They stood in the doorway, watching until Christian vanished from sight. Despite the ache of saying goodbye, Caroline felt something inside her settle into calm faith. For the first time in years, she believed they weren't alone. She and Emily had found not just a father for the little girl, but a partner and friend who was learning day by day how to cherish them above all else. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.